it. So let me bring this up.
I think there is a way now to record video as well.
Oh,
So
there is. So you can do
I
that.
yeah, I think so. This is the first time that I see the feature. We will know in the end if it's working. But
Okay.
please go ahead, and thank you again for coming. Welcome. So nice.
Well, thank you. Okay. I'll record the video on mine as well in 1080p, and we'll see what happens. Yeah, so I need to share my screen, right? So let me do that. Screen 2, share screen. Okay, guys. Good evening. Welcome, and thank you for being here. So I believe this is my fourth talk in this channel, and I'll be talking about Islam. And my expertise is really in Islamic law, and I do a lot of research work into Islamic history. Now, it should be noted that the Jews and are blamed. The Jews are blamed for a lot of things that are actually explicitly mentioned, explicitly discussed, and made commandments within the Islamic scriptures and with the Islamic law. And so I want to start with this because tonight, at the request of Harry, we're going to be talking about Gnosticism, about Islam, the threat of Islam, and also I'm going to start linking Islam to secret societies like the Freemasons, because few people are aware, but Islam, most explicitly the Sufis, do claim to have been the original Freemasons. So the Sufis, who are Islamic, who are the highest tier of scholars, the Sufi saints, they claim to have to be the original Freemasons, and B, to have founded the Freemasons in England, and then in the 14th century to have smuggled the Freemasons by means of the Knights Templar into Scotland. So they claim to have founded the 33rd degree Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, and also to have effectively co-opted the Templars and turned them Islamic. So I'm going to go in all of this evidence. A lot of this is not well known. None of it's not well researched yet, because as far as I know, I'm just about the only person that's digging in this direction. And you'll notice that most of the claims made against the Jews, you're going to find it out against the Talmud, etc., are verifiably false. So, and so I want you just to take a note and have a look at this symbol. So this is the Islamic symbol. Okay, this is the sword of Muhammad, right? When you see someone with a name like Saif, right, like Saif Allah, that was a guy in New York who drove a car over people or something of that nature. Saif Allah means the sword of Allah. So Islamic names mean something. So this is the sword of Muhammad, and this is the symbol of the Muslim Brotherhood, the world's largest secret society. It has, according to the information we have, roughly 100 million adherents, and it's got about 2 or 3 million members. So no one knows exactly because they're a secret society. So understand that this is their symbol. Now, you may or may not be surprised when you find out later, as I go through the presentation, that the Freemasons have exactly the same symbology. The Freemasons use this exact same Islamic symbology, and we will get to that, and you'll see this later. So then I'm going to go to a different document. So let me go here. I was asked to start the talk on, right. This is a document I wrote for an organization that will remain nameless for now. But I wrote this document for an organization who is doing work with governments in Europe and now in America. And I had to write about the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, I will go through portions of this just to give some background and to lay a foundation for this talk as to why Islam is a threat. So through the Muslim Brotherhood, which is very well funded and must be noted, was founded by a Sufi, and the Sufi was also a Freemason. Okay, his name was Hassan al-Banna. Al-Banna is the Arabization of the term builder. The term builder is how within the Arab countries they refer to a mason. A mason is someone who works with bricks and builds. And so Hassan the builder is Hassan the mason, Hassan the Freemason. And the Sufis claim to have founded the Freemasons, as I said. So they are involved in a civilization jihad. Their main target is America. If America falls, everyone else will be weakened because America is the most powerful military in the world, most influential. 2004, the FBI catches a top Muslim Brotherhood operative called Ismail al-Barasi and his wife. So a Maryland Transportation Authority policeman observes them videotaping the structural supports of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. So an ID check, oops, here I've got the wrong thing here. I need to go to disable that. And let me, oops, again, my apologies. I am making wrong mistakes here. Somehow I have point to focus. Sorry, there we go. So the check establishes that he is wanted in connection with Hamas fundraising activities in Chicago. This eventually was connected to the largest terror funding trial in America, right? Called the Holy Land Foundation trial. Was the largest terrorism financing conspiracy ever prosecuted in the United States. Not to say that there aren't larger fish to fry, but just the only one they were able to prosecute. They discovered 80 boxes of documents in a secret sub-basement in his house, right? This is the Holy Land Foundation, right? And these documents discovered a treasure trove. Well, the documents were a treasure trove. The most illuminating of these documents was the 1991 strategic plan for the United States, entitled Explanatory Memorandum on the General Strategic Goals of the Group, right? It was written by Muhammad Akram, one of the top Muslim brothers in the United States. And let's just jump to what it means, right? Oh, and they do state that the Muslim Brotherhood's purpose is to destroy Western civilization from within by its own hands and the hands of the Sharia-compliant adherents, the Muslims. It says here, the role of the Muslim Brotherhood in America is to destroy America. The process of settlement, right, is a civilization jihadist process with all the word means. The Ikhwan must understand, this is the Muslim Brotherhood, the Ikhwani Muslimun. They must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers, so that it is eliminated and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions. This is the aim of the Muslim Brotherhood. These are not extremists. We need to understand that there are no extreme Muslims. Islam has two doctrines. There are two ways of observing Islam. One is azima, and the other is rukhsa. Azima is strict adherence to the Sharia, to the law of Islam. They are simply following azima. They're being strict. Those who are not are following rukhsa. Both of these are considered righteous by Allah. Both earn reward, but only azima gets the greatest of reward, because jihad, which is killing and being killed in the service of Allah for the religion of Allah, earns you the highest rewards in paradise. Those who are following rukhsa get a reward, however, not as high, but also understand there are 14 different kinds of jihad identified by Islam's religious scholars. Now, if anyone has any questions, if you want to see the 14 kinds, I can bring up those notes. I can show you this. I can show you rukhsa and azima. I can go to the resources. But I will be coming back to various of these. I will be repeating sections as we go, because I need to reinforce this knowledge, and because people do forget. The document goes on to say, without this level of understanding, we are not up to this challenge and have not prepared ourselves for jihad yet. It is a Muslim's destiny to perform jihad and work wherever he is and wherever he lands until the final hour comes, and there is no escape from that destiny. Okay? And it says it, with the slackers and the mujahideen, these are the fighters of Allah, be equal, but they are not. This is reference to an Islamic verse. I'm not going to go into that right now. So the Muslim Brotherhood's strategy for destroying Western civilization is described in an undated document entitled Phases of the World Underground Movement Plan. They have 5 phases for the infiltration of America and an American coup. Now understand, Al-Qaeda, which is actually a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, all the Osama bin Laden and others who head up and have headed up Al-Qaeda were all members of the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay, so Al-Qaeda has their own 7-stage plan. The Muslim Brotherhood has a 5-stage plan, right? But so we'll get into the Al-Qaeda plan another time. But for now, recognized as being in phase 4 of this plan since at least 2017, phase 5 is a violent coup, and the phases with their self-assessment are as follows. Now, I must note that there is within the Sharia law a statement that says, if you look at the definition of jihad, the legal definition of jihad within Sharia, which is war against non-Muslims to establish Islam, they state there that one who provides weapons for the jihad has himself done jihad. Okay, so understand, it is I could actually go into the Sharia and show you that statement. That's the legal definition of jihad, which I did last week in my show. But one who has provided weapons for the jihad has himself done jihad, which is very interesting that the US left $85 billion of weapons in Afghanistan because one who provides weapons for the jihad, and guess what those weapons will be used for, has done jihad. So without going into all the details, there has been extensive infiltration of the US government, Republican and Democrat, most explicitly, though, most especially Democrat, but certainly Republican under George Bush, especially within the US government. So phase one, discreet and secret establishment of elite leadership. Now remember, these documents were verified, were captured by the FBI, were verified in court, were used in court, and they were never contested. They were never claimed to be anything other than entirely legitimate. This phase has already been implemented in this country, so they've already established a secret elite leadership. Right? That's already been done in the US. Phase two, the phase of gradual appearance on the public scene and exercising and utilizing public activities. It has greatly succeeded in implementing this stage, the rise of Islam. It also succeeded in achieving a great deal of its important goals, such as infiltrating various sectors of the government, gaining religious institutions, embracing senior scholars. They've pumped billions of dollars into the top 100 universities in America, especially the top 13. They've pumped untold billions of dollars. Gaining public support and sympathy, right? Establishing a shadow government secret within the government, otherwise known as the deep state. And we will come across various definitions. When you talk about Islam, you talk about the Ummah, the nation of Islam. The nation of Islam are led by the scholars. The scholars are known as the ulama. Single scholar is known as an alim. The ulama are considered, and the reference here that I will show you later is going to be the Encyclopedia of Islam, which is the gold standard for academic research on Islam. Only costs you about 40 grand to buy a copy. It shows that the ulama have been a secret government in control of Islam since time immemorial. So they're simply following a tradition that is already established within Islam. So they will establish a secret shadow government. Okay, and remember, they're in phase four. They've already succeeded in doing this. Phase three, escalation, prior to conflict and confrontation with the rulers through utilizing mass media, currently in progress. 9/11, as I discussed last week, was the opening salvo, the opening shot in a 21-year campaign. That was for Al-Qaeda. 7 phases, 3 years per phase. Understand? So I'll pause here for a moment. Any comment from you, Harry, or if does anyone else have a something to contribute?
Any comments, guys, or questions? No, please continue.
Phase 4, open public confrontation with the government, exercising the political pressure approach. Ilhan Omar, anybody? Right. Have a look at the Muslims within the British government. Have a look at the very active Muslims within the American government. Right. Rashida Tlaib. Should be noted, the Taliban means the students of the knowledge. Right. The knowledge is the Gnosis, because Islam, when you read the Sharia, when you read the fiqh, the Islamic law, the Sharia tells you, and the scholars tell you, they are Gnostics. Islam is explicitly a Gnostic religion. They are those who study the Gnosis. They're the ones who are the students. So the Taliban are the students of the Gnosis. Rashida Tlaib, her surname Tlaib comes from Taliban, the students. So she shares a title or a name with the Taliban. It says here, it is aggressively implementing the above-mentioned approach. These are their words, right? They are training on the use of weapons domestically and overseas in anticipation of 0 hour when they launch their coup. It has noticeable activities in this regard. In phase 5, seizing power to establish the Islamic nation under which all parties and Islamic groups are united. All the above-mentioned phases are preliminary steps to reach the above-mentioned phase. The underground movement is also a plan exclusive to the post-seizure of power stage. Now, they have established their secret leadership cadre. Phase 1 is complete. Now, they have a list there within this document of 29 groups under the heading, a list of our organization today. Today, this list has grown to something like 200 organizations. Okay? Islamic Medical Association, Islamic Teaching Center, the Muslim Students Association, Islamic Society of North America. This is the very first one they established in the early 60s. This one has been the most prolific. This is the one doing dawah on the university campuses. This one is very dangerous. This one, the MSA, has mushroomed off a bunch of these other organizations. The Islamic Book Service, the Isna Fiqh. The Fiqh is the application of the Islamic law. Let me see, Mercy International Association, Islamic Circle of North America, which in their madrasa guides, which is the guide they give to their children and teenagers on how to behave correctly, right? ICNA can show you their tarbiyah guide for the Chicago chapter, teaches jihad, and not jihad of having more salads or helping little old ladies across the street, but the jihad of violence. Okay, they make very clear to explain to the kids, this is what jihad is. Now, I want to skip a few things. Okay. Now, okay, so the FBI was monitoring some of these activities in the past, and they have managed to catch some of these, but that's not where I want to go. Let me see. So in phase 4, let's have a quick look. In phase 3, the Muslim Brotherhood describes its objective of conflict and confrontation with the rulers. In other words, the Ikhwan is not non-violent, right? Everyone seems to claim that the Muslim Brotherhood is non-violent. This is a mistake. They are merely pre-violent, right? Their first phases of the plan are just pre-violent. In phase 4, they confront the government through non-violent means, right? So we'll see this today with the Islam-aligned politics of Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and so on, right? And weapons training, if they were peaceful, they wouldn't be involved in weapons training. Now understand, they have certain verses that are important to them, like, I've been made victorious with terror, casting the hearts of the enemy, right? And so on. We all know about all of this stuff but now I want to go to a few things. Now, this is the Muslim Brotherhood's playbook for Western subjugation, right? This is an actual written plan. This is not the whatever it was of the elders of Zion, whatever that's a known fraud. This is an actual legitimate set of documents by people who have billions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of followers. Right. Now, let's look at the implementation. They will expand the Muslim presence by birth rate, immigration, and refusal to assimilate. They will occupy and expand domination of physical spaces. Okay. They will control the language we use in describing the enemy. Okay. They will make sure that we do not study their doctrine, the Sharia, right? And so on. They will do a number of things. Give you an example. This was CARE. They had to retract this eventually. But CARE was telling their followers, this is the Council on American Islamic Relations, not American and Saudi relations, American and Islamic. They said they speak for Islam, for Islamic doctrine, right? They speak for Allah here. And do not talk to the FBI. Do not give information. Within the Sharia says explicitly that Muslims may not provide information to an enemy who wants to do wrong, because they are doing right and the enemy is doing wrong. So if the enemy is attempting to prevent Islamic terror, that enemy is wrong and Islamic terror is right. And thus, they must not follow this. This is entirely 100% in alignment with a doctrine called commanding the right and forbidding the wrong within Islam. Right, so a couple of things. 7 of their strategies with their stealth jihad. The kafir must remain ignorant of the nature and encroachment of the Sharia and the threat that the Ikhwan represents. Now, the US has a military term for this called information dominance. Okay, it is a potentially decisive advantage in warfare if you can perceive, anticipate, and counter a threat posed by an enemy, if you know their threat doctrine. But an inability to assess a threat leaves you completely vulnerable to it. You're blind to it, right? So the Ikhwan, the Muslim Brotherhood, has moved to shape and dominate our perception of them, those poor Muslims, right? We've been led to dismiss and misunderstand the enemy, and we deny its intentions and its threat doctrine. So think about this. These terms, are they familiar to you? Because they make you underestimate, or as George Bush would say, to misunderestimate the enemy as intended. The religion was hijacked. People in caves, people with box cutters, nothing to do with Islam. They're camel jockeys, towel heads, rag heads. It's a religion of peace. Now, it's interesting that these poor people who can only live in caves are floating on oil and have more super yachts than anyone else, right? They have more palaces than anybody else, but they're poor and live in caves, right? So now Sun Tzu said, every battle is won before it is fought. And he also said, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Let your plans be dark and as impenetrable as night. And when you move, fall like a thunderbolt. So that's some nice Sun Tzu stuff there. So understand they are following this kind of warfare doctrine, right? So they've infiltrated and they've achieved information dominance over the primary US threat detection and response agencies. All reference to jihad, all reference to Islamic ideology and the Sharia has been scrubbed from all CIA and FBI training manuals. What is there is so neutered, it's useless, right? They've prevented speakers who are expert on the subject from talking there. They have completely neutered the army and the civilian defense agencies. So let's take the idea of information dominance and let's apply it to medicine as an example. Imagine the words, let's take the word heart, attack, cardiac, arrest, and cholesterol. And all these words are racist and we can't use them. Now, if these words were scrubbed from medical texts and then were made taboo because they are hateful, bigoted, racist, and heartophobic, because you don't want to use heartophobic words, do you? That's a peaceful heart, right? So now you can't use those heartophobic words towards these peaceful, gentle hearts. Then doctors will have to say that you are suffering from body extremism, violent upper body extremism, violent extremism of the chest. You're experiencing chest extremism. You're getting violent chest cavity palpitations, chest pain extremism, chest violent extremism, upper thorax extremism, chest cavity extremism. All chests are the same. There are extremists in all of them. Why are you complaining? All chests have extremists. Diet has nothing to do with thorax extremism. Extremism has no diet. Hospitals that discuss hearts are racist and heartophobic. Heart profiling is racist. How can you profile hearts? Hearts are good. How can you heart profile? Heart textbooks can only be understood in Arabic. That medical diagnosis is out of context. Don't use the words heart attack. Rather say body extremism. You're suffering from body extremism. Are you anti-cholesterol? You're promoting cholesterol hatred. So you hate 1 billion cholesterols? This has nothing to do with hearts. Does all this sound familiar? I'll pause here. Does all this sound familiar to you?
It does. It does. Please go on. It's very interesting.
So the language gets twisted and the language gets it all wrong. It loses the ability to describe, it loses precision. And who benefits? Well, the enemy. See, America's intelligence agencies have accepted the enemy's definition of the enemy. So now let's look at one example from Philip Haney. The DHS ordered me to scrub records of Muslims with terror ties. I was ordered by my superiors at the Department of Homeland Security to delete or modify hundreds of records of individuals tied to designated Islamic terror groups like Hamas. Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine. Hamas is a Muslim Brotherhood organization, right? They had to scrub them from the federal database, the Treasury Enforcement Communication System. These types of records are the basis for any ability to connect the dots. Every day, DHS Customs and Border Protection officers watch many individuals entering and exiting who have known terrorist affiliations, and they look for patterns. Enforcing a politically motivated scrubbing of records of Muslims greatly affected our ability to do that. Even worse, my colleagues and I were prohibited from entering new pertinent information into the database. Philip B. Haney is a founding member of the DHS in March 2003. Right? He was a Customs and Border Protection officer, and he retired in 2015 with 15 years federal service. And he's author of the book, See Something, Say Nothing. And of course, the Obama administration was very, very friendly towards the Muslim Brotherhood. So I'll finish here with this just to set the groundwork to understand that we're dealing with a threat. We need to understand the threat. It's also, what is very interesting is that many people don't believe in religion. They go, well, I'm not religious, so therefore it doesn't matter. It matters to them. It matters to these people. They are religious. They're motivated religiously. They don't care what you think. They care what they think, right? They're interested in their thoughts, their culture, their ideas. We need to understand, we have to know our enemy, whereas we seem to have too much of, well, I'm ignorant of the enemy and I like it. And this is not a safe approach. So, short version, we're looking at demoralization warfare, which is a moral inversion. So propaganda warfare, ideological warfare, is always first and foremost a moral war. You have to alter the morals of your enemy. So the aim of the enemy is to inhibit critical analysis and design mimetic arguments that inspire. So they need to design arguments that have a debilitating effect on the culture that they're attacking. But they must also inhibit your ability to perform critical analysis. One, destroy the method that you can use, the tools you can use, and two, deny you information. So they utilize shame because you do not critically examine or defend what you are ashamed of. You retreat from it. You white man, you were a slave owner, you slave owners. That's shame. Amnesia. Let's remove all the statues. Let's take down all the paintings. Let's change the textbooks. That's amnesia. You are destroying the culture, removing the reminders of the things that would tell you this is your culture, these are your values, this is what you believe in, this is what your ancestors fought for, so that you cannot be inspired by or draw from what you forgot or do not know. And three, irrationality. Destroy logic and evidence with rhetoric, propaganda, and emotion. Are your fifis hurt? I identify as my feelings, my feelings. Is this familiar, right? The only rational response and the only moral response is to identify and relentlessly expose each and every talking point of this nature as a lie. Comments from anyone? Any questions or comments?
Questions or comments, please?
Good evening. Sorry, I couldn't talk earlier because I've been driving, but I've got back and been paying as much attention as I can.
Right.
But I've been warning people for a long time. Matter much less you think and much more what others do. And we have been cuckolded and led into a place of naivety that is profound. And it looks as though the judiciary are being assisted in this. Anyway, listen, keep going because it's fascinating.
Excellent stuff. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, demoralization. Now, understand, people think of demoralization as how do you feel? I feel a little down. My team lost in soccer last night. No, demoralization. Let's think of it literally. Strip his morals, remove his morals out of his brain, give him new ones. Okay? Remove his morals. So, pedophilia is bad. I think we all generally agree. Well, as you know, the left, the LGBTQPEDO plus groups are definitely trying to push pedo as a legitimate sexual lifestyle, as a lifestyle choice, as you know. Well, how do they get to do that? Well, they have to remove moral restraints against it. They have to demoralize you. So demoralization in warfare and national security is destruction of national morale. So it's not just about morale, it's literally about removal of morality and the replacement of national cultural values and morals. It creates uncertainty, okay, because you cannot identify a threat. Is this bad? I don't know. Should I care about it? Should I respond? Should I react? How? I don't know. They look friendly. Okay. It creates uncertainty. Uncertainty leads to paralysis. The inability to do anything leads to despair and submission. And Islam wants your submission because Islam means submission. And then you must be remoralized because the re-education camps, you know, the Soviets love those things, right? They will teach you some new morals to their strategically imposed antithetical values. So while the process may use propaganda, deception, disinformation, agents of influence, forgeries, and many other political warfare tools to accomplish its goals, strategic demoralization will combine and customize these means to the target. So the attack will not only limit itself to undermining target morale. The campaign will generally pursue three avenues of implementation. One, you must divert hatred that you would normally direct at the enemy. So you must deny them the ability to express frustration, disgust, contempt, or hatred of an enemy. So thus you must deny a unified outlet for frustration. Go on Facebook and try to say that you dislike LGBT. You can't. You cannot form a unified group. You then become a hate group. You're targeted, you're silenced. So you divert the hatred normally directed at the enemy. So what happens is that feeling of frustration is directed inwards and it collapses your morale. So two, you must sow seeds of self-doubt, which is called classical demoralization from the Soviet side. Right? Sow seeds of self-doubt. Am I right? Am I wrong? I don't know. Does anyone else feel this way? Am I the only one? It seems like it's just me on Facebook, no one else, because Facebook is silencing everyone else. They're siloing you. They're hiding you. Everyone's being shadow banned. Three, provide a new focus of frustration. White people, those Christians, right? Provide a new focus of frustration, hatred, and blame. The Jews, oh my gosh, need I say more, right? The Jews, Christianity, those evil Christians, those evil white males, those cis white het males, those people, they're the bad ones. Those right wingers, right? Those far right people who like family, God, and country, and owning guns. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, for warfare purposes, humiliation leads to withdrawal from critical analysis of painful or embarrassing events. So therefore, you don't want to respond to, you don't want to react to. Slave, you're a slave owner. Shut up, you're a slave owner. You're a bad person. Your ancestors owned slaves. This is humiliation. So you don't go and you don't engage and you do not examine the facts, the lack of truth or the truth of an issue. So what happens is this leads to amnesia. You want to forget. Okay, everyone forgets. It's too painful. You create trauma. Okay, it's trauma-based programming. So you are traumatized and you want to forget. When you forget, you become disoriented because you forget your cultures, your values, your morals, what is important. And because you are unable to orient upon events that impinge upon them, people can no longer recognize friends nor identify and respond to threats. So amnesia is critical so you can no longer recognize your friends nor identify and respond to threats. The result is you are vulnerable and you have a complete lack of awareness. You are incredibly weak at that point. Any comment before I continue?
Questions?
Right. So, yeah.
No, nothing. Go
Right.
ahead, please.
So now we're dealing with what is called the critical denial of an enemy image in information dominance. So an important early step to successful demoralization is to deny the target the ability to verbalize frustrations and anger or identify the enemy. Because what has replaced this? Think about it. What has replaced the ability to say that is an enemy? That ideology is hateful, evil, disgusting, and should be suppressed, should be banned. Okay? Tolerance. No, we need to tolerate it because they just like us. They just want to bang our 3-year-olds, but they're just like us. They're nice. We have to tolerate this because they aren't banging my 3-year-old right now. So I guess it's okay. Understand? This is a problem. And this is the point of hate speech laws. It denies the target the ability to verbalize frustrations and identify the enemy, because then once you can identify the enemy, everyone goes, yeah, I agree with that. Yes, they are the bad guys. Let's go after them. Hate speech laws do not allow you to do this. So you cannot organize. These efforts neutralize the target's ability to voice discontent. You cannot discuss serious issues. You cannot analyze the enemy, and you cannot find common cause allies. Your frustrations will build until the only outlet is to divert them elsewhere. Most likely, psychologically, you will divert them internally, and this will eat away at you. Seeds of doubt will grow in the minds of the citizenry, who will then start to question their leadership, because why are they? I can't do anything. I'm trapped. Why is my leadership not doing anything? So now you start to distrust your leadership, and you think that they are dishonest or weak. You distrust your government, and you feel isolated and helpless. So you feel there's no one to help you, no one understands, you are helpless, you are isolated, and your government is not to be trusted. You have nowhere to turn. Self-doubt or doubt in a cause is the simple so seeds of doubt and anxiety are then sowed. Self-doubt or doubt in a cause is the simple definition most commonly ascribed to demoralization. It is only one aspect of a successful strategic demoralization campaign, but it is the most essential part. So propaganda is a tool in creating this environment of doubt and anxiety. According to a scholar called Lasswell, he says the keynote in the preliminary spade work is the unceasing refrain: your cause is hopeless. Your blood is spilt in vain. Your cause is hopeless. Now, note the current active denial of the term spying. Now, this was when we all know for a fact now that the Trump admin was being spied upon. Okay, the media was constantly harping on the fact that there was no spying. Okay, now it has now been proven that there was illegal spying on the Trump campaign. Now, who benefits? Who benefits when they actively deny that there was no spying? This is just denial. So there was a tactic called defense by admission accompanied by justification. Right, this is a World War I tactic, but it goes back prior to that and has been used after that, of course. So defense by admission accompanied by justification. Used since World War I to defend German atrocities in the press, the technique would make the admission that an atrocity occurred but then they would publish accounts that the event was exaggerated in earlier reports. This is to some degree, you'll notice also it's used in whataboutism. Well, the Muslims murdered all of these. They murdered 1.5 million Armenians. Yeah, but what about the Jews who went and murdered everybody in Europe with the Black Plague? You know, understand? That's another issue like that. So anyway, such events occurred in every army, and so then they reported, well, look, that was exaggerated. Yes, we did kill people, but it was only 2 guys and a donkey, right? And the rest were geese that happened to be in the area when the bomb went off, right? And such events occurred in every army, but all hearts are extremists. You know, all hearts, all chests have extremists inside them. You know, all people, you know, all religions have extremists. You know, and they occurred least often in the German army. You know, but Islam is peaceful. You know, it happens mostly in Christians. You know, mostly with them. So understand, this is also the standard of doctrine in Islamic apologetics. So now, you must divert your frustrations and your hatred to a new target, and the convenient target is unfortunately the Jews. The most powerful strategy of demoralization is diversion. But, okay, it is a difficult and multifaceted operation. The problem is it's been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years already. So Laswell notes, to undermine the active hatred of the enemy for its present antagonist, his anger must be distracted to a new and independent object, besides which his present antagonist ceases to matter. Right? So, now, for instance, they need you to hate your government. Don't be angry at the Muslims, hate your government. So now they can divert it at the authorities, who are another obstacle. So now you start to hate your government, you take down your government, you have no leadership, you're weak, they can take over because they can then fill the power vacuum. So diversion of hatred towards a new target is predicated upon the antagonist diverting hatred away from themselves, fostering anxiety that cannot be mitigated by the existing cause or the leadership. So the hatred is then diverted towards an ally or a weak minority group like Jews or other targets. So you hate your friends, you hate the Jews, you hate the Christians, you hate whomever, and you then focus on other targets. So this, I'll finish with this soon, okay? As an opening, I'll finish with this. Tactics. So here's a non-exhaustive list of demoralization tactics. Anyone who wants this document, I'm happy to send them a copy, right? But any tactic of political, psychological, and kinetic warfare, actual bombs going off, may be used as appropriate. They will insert into neutral press and social media, right? Your Facebook Trust and Safety Council, your YouTube and Twitter Trust and Safety Council, run by Marxists and Muslims, okay? Media infiltration, controlling shares, right? At one time, a Muslim, a Saudi, controlled over 50% of Twitter, right? Direct transmission through publications or radio, books and pamphlets, forgeries, including official documents like the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, right? Deception, disinformation, and agents of influence. Now, what defenses do we have? Every message that resistance shall end is false. This is a Swedish information folder, first issued in 1943 and still active today, called If the War Comes, right? They have this message that says every message that resistance shall end is false. In other words, you must never give up. Morale can be difficult to maintain, but strong leadership can mitigate attacks against group morale. Morale deteriorates if members of the group perceive themselves as victims of injustice or indifference on the part of leadership, which is why they have to abuse you with injustice. They must undermine the judiciary. But look at the new victim culture, right? Because according to Islamic doctrine, the person that is hurting you, think of an abusive relationship, a woman with no money, weak woman, not very strong physically, who is abused by a strong, domineering husband who controls her life in every way. While he is the threat in her life, while he is the domineering force, while he is the abuser in her life, he is also the thing that she turns to for protection, because she hopes if she pleases him, she will not suffer. And Islamic doctrine, Islamic warfare doctrine, quite specifically, I showed this last week on the channel. I worked with a book called The Quranic Concept of War by a man called S.K. Malik, Pakistani general, and it was endorsed by the Pakistani government. So it's their version of Sun Tzu, right? The Art of War. It states that the thing that you fear must be the source of your protection. So as noted by Angelo Codevilla, the clearest indicators that morale can withstand a demoralization campaign are also hallmarks of a well-led organization and can be explained through 5 main questions. Does the group respect their leadership? So when you start to disrespect your government, if it's good government, and you start to disrespect it, they are winning. Those are signs that they are winning. Okay, but do you respect your leadership more than you fear the enemy? Ask yourself. So that can be either an authoritarian type of fear or a more democratic type of fear, which the members of the group fear contributing to the failure of their cause. In other words, everybody wants to win. Are you afraid of losing, or do you want to win? Right? Does the group feel appreciated by their leadership? Because no human will work to their full potential if they don't feel appreciated. Right? Those who feel appreciated will contribute remarkable amounts, including sacrificing their lives. We will fight them on the beaches. Okay, now I will shut up because I don't want Facebook to take away my posting privileges. Do the constituent parts of the group feel their contributions are important? Do they feel that they are making an effort in contributing to a cause? Right? So, and do the constituent parts of the group have habits of loyalty and camaraderie? But the question is, what is the cause? What are you rallying around? What flag? What ideology? What belief? Understand? Right? So if everybody's a libertarian, libertarians are some of the not to offend anyone, but libertarians are the lolbitarian movement. Let's just call it that. The lolbitarians have it all wrong. You need to organize. There comes a point you need to organize. You cannot all be, because united you stand, divided you fall, and being too much independent, being too much of an independent entity, as we within the conservative movement at least, there's that idea. Unfortunately, you can't stand alone. They'll just pick you apart. Okay, divide and conquer for a reason, right? So anyway, final things. Okay, credibility is the bedrock of defense against demoralization. So yeah, so you need to stand up. You need to show others. You need to be an example. But in conclusion, short version: identify and name the enemy. You must identify, name the enemy. Identify, name his strategies. Make them clear. Make them known. Remove doubt. List his arguments, list his talking points, undermine each one, and remove their credibility. I'll stop here for now. Anyone who wants this, I'm happy to share this document. If you send it to them, or provide it to Harry, who can make a link and download it. Give me 1 second, please, guys. I will be with you in just a moment. And I'm back. Right.
Welcome
Any
back.
questions or comments?
If you can send the document to the main channel or to me in private, and then I will spread it, that would be nice.
Right. So what did you get from this? Anyone who wants to chat, who wants to ask any questions, or any comments or thoughts?
Please raise your hand if you want to say something or ask something.
Yeah, I'm seeing parallel stratagems. One of my connections is deeply involved in this coming potential technocracy, and I don't talk to him much these days, but we did establish very clearly that a great deal of the infrastructure in terms of communications, the fiber optics, the really big stuff, all seems to end or run through the area of the Middle East, the Eastern Mediterranean.
Okay, well, I wouldn't know how to interpret that. I mean, but yeah, look, those are issues above our pay grade, to be quite honest. So we need to focus on issues that we can deal with. We need to be able to do what we can within our scope. Right? You need to be an inspiration to others. You need to lead within your group. You need to provide certainty. Right? But one of the main things is that you need to rally. I didn't want to put this in here because I had to stay away from certain topics within this because of the group's policies. But when I wrote this, you have to rally around the flag, okay? And quite bluntly, the most successful of those flags is God, family, and country, okay? And understand that if you look at what's happening within the West today, there's an undermining of God, family, and country. Okay, Americans hate their nations. Brits are told that they have no culture. Family, well, 85% single mothers. right? No fathers, and 2 men are a family. No, they're not, because how are you going to have kids, right? So understand, these are undermined for a reason. So yeah, any other comment? Then I'll move on to the next section of this. So hopefully this has been a helpful introduction to the threat, to understand what the threat is, to lay this out without too much detail.
It was very helpful. Thank you. And please go on to the main topic.
Okay, so let me see. Okay, so now I'm going to dive into Islam, and I'm going to talk about this is fairly new research. I'm the only person as far as I know who's doing this in this way, making a synthesis of all of this information. However, we need to understand that I'm going to jump to the end because that will help. You need to understand that Islam is a Gnostic religion. Gnosticism was the greatest threat to the church in the first 4 or 5 centuries. And it has never gone away. It is still around in the shape of Islam. And you need to understand that I'm just going to show you this just to tell us where we're going to go, just to lead in. Okay, just so you know where we're going to get to. Now, this is the Goat of Mendes. Now, look, there are different variations of this through the centuries. Okay, there are older ones and newer ones. The newer ones have more detail. The older ones have less detail. Some are just the head, some are the whole body, etc., etc., etc. Okay, this just happens to be the common depiction. It is not the only depiction. So I'm jumping to the end just to give us an idea of where we're going. Notice that you have the star and the crescent, which are exactly what we would see if we look at the symbol of Islam. Now, someone with a great deal of intelligence is going to say, well, actually, that's the Turkish symbol, and that was only established in the 1800s. It wasn't there originally, And, it doesn't matter if Islam was constructed out of plastic in Walt Disney's garage in 1973. Okay? It doesn't matter because it is what it is today. Okay? It is what it is today, and it's doing what it's doing because it believes what it believes. So it's nice to know the nuts and bolts, but we have to take it as it is. We have to deal with it for what it is right now. Okay? So let's have a read through this just so that we can set the different stage. Baphomet is equal to Muhammad. This is the prophet of Islam. And Baphomet is often considered Satan. Right? In some conceptions, Baphomet is Satan. Now, modern scholars agree that the name Baphomet was an old French corruption of the name Muhammad, with the interpretation being that some of the Templars, through their long military occupation, had begun incorporating Islamic ideas into their belief system, and that this was seen and documented by inquisitors as heresy. Now, I will be bringing up various documentation on this point. I'll be doing more than one presentation to cover some of the depth of the documentation available. There's lots of stories. I'm going to go through what I can document and prove. In the Chanson de Simon Pieux, written before 1235, a Saracen, an Islamic idol, is called Baphomet. Okay, an early form of the word Baphomet. So in other words, an Islamic symbol was called Baphomet, right? Saracen. Now, you will find different views of this term, but one of the accepted terms, one of the main term is that Saracens are the children of Sarah, right? So that's from a biblical reference to Abram, who had a child, and the Ishmaelites come from Sarah. So you had Hagar and Sarah, the Saracens, right? Or is it not the children of Sarah, but the abandoned of Sarah that were kicked out or whatever? A chronicler of the First Crusade, Raymond of Aguirre, called mosques Bafumarias. So one of the oldest historians who wrote about the First Crusade called mosques, Islamic mosques, Bafumarias, right? Peter Partner, in his 1987 book, The Knights Templar and Their Myths, says in the trial of the Templars, one of their main charges was their supposed worship of a heathen idol head known as a Baphomet. So the Templars were worshipping ultimately Muhammad. They became Islamic. However, there's more to this picture than we know. And also understand, people will say, well, they were tortured, and therefore the interesting thing is that there were very few tortures. Most of them were simply questioned. They were caught, they were questioned all across Europe, right? And most of the 85% plus of the confessions were all done without torture. There were simply people who just said, look, this is what I saw, this is what happened. Okay, very few tortures were done. And so the testimony from Portugal through to wherever, Germany, Austria, all agreed, right? Okay, so I'm going to skip that. So I'll leave that for the moment. So understand that you're dealing with something that people say, well, this is the Jews. No, no, no. The evidence all exclusively points to this symbol of the Freemasons, this symbol of the Satanists is 100% Islamic. Okay, so I'll start there. So let me begin here and let me just run through this. I may skip the occasional slide, and there'll be 2 different slideshows I need to do, maybe not all today. Okay, if anyone has a question, let me know. So let me start, as I like to do, with something very, very important so that you can learn about Islam, so you can learn the beauty and the perfection of Islam from its own sources. This is from what's called the Sahih Hadith, which Sahih means this is a sound, authentic, true Hadith. Okay, it's a narration about the Prophet or by the Prophet or something important about Islam. I heard Muhammad, the Messenger of Allah, say, "Do not kill your children secretly, for the milk with which a child is suckled while his mother is pregnant overtakes the horseman and throws him from his horse." As you can see, this is really profound knowledge. And if anyone can explain this to me, I'd love to hear it. Harry, any thoughts from you?
No, I don't want to explain that. You go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Islam's finest. Okay? This is Muhammad doing his best Joe Biden impersonation. Okay? So do not kill your children secretly, for the milk with which a child is suckled while his mother is pregnant will overtake the horseman and throws him from his horse. I have no idea how to interpret that, but it's certainly not the Sermon on the Mount. I will say that. This is Hadith number 3881 in Sunan Abu Dawud, one of the 6 canonical Hadith collections in Islam, which is just garbage. Right, so now we're going to talk about Gnosticism, because we need to understand the motivations of Islam. Right, I will not be able to do everything in one show. There's too much. So hopefully I won't go too fast. Any questions, please let me know. Again, to reiterate, Gnosticism is the greatest threat to ever face the church. Okay, this was at the founding of the church and now. So we're going to do a brief overview of Gnostics. We're going to explain that Islam is explicitly a Gnostic religion. Why the Nicene Creed? We need to also go and kill a few sacred cows and a few misconceptions and outright lies, frauds, and misdirections. Okay? Because people will tell you the Nicene Creed, the church, this and that, that's fine and well. That the Nicene Creed established Christianity, that Jesus was made into a deity at the Council of Nicaea. The Nicene Creed was to affirm Christian doctrine and refute heresies. Simple as that. We will look at some Gnostic heresies. Then we will look at some biblical warnings against false gnosis. Now, it doesn't matter if you're not a Christian, doesn't matter if you don't believe. The fact is that they believe. They believe it. Your enemies believe it. And we need to know what they believe, why they believe, how they believe, what they infer, and how they intend to apply all of this. Okay? So, demoting Jesus and the deity of Muhammad as the light of the world, we're going to learn a little bit about that. And then we'll learn the Islamic orthodoxy about Christianity. And then, finally, the Islamic occult connections to the Templars, to the KKK, and the Freemasons. And of course, we're also going to learn about how the Nazi Party started as an Islamic organization, which is something most people are not really aware of. But yeah, that's odd. Surprised the Muslims don't broadcast that from the rooftops. So Gnosticism was the greatest challenge and threat to the Christian church, and those ideas are thriving today. So in its early history, the church was opposed by several mystery religions. So these mysteries involved secret societies. Islam has the world's biggest secret society. Like I said, the Muslim Brotherhood, 100 million adherents, 2-3 million members, nobody knows, billions of dollars in funding. Occult, magical rituals and practices, you're going to find that in Islam. Levels of understanding, secret levels of understanding reserved only for the elite, that is 100% Islam. Denial of Jesus' divinity. All the Gnostics did this. They denied his death, his resurrection, his humanity, etc., and combinations of the above, Islam. And of course, a radical reinterpretation of biblical doctrine. Why? Because they have to deny biblical morality. They have to deny the laws of God within the Old and the New Testaments. Okay? Now, I am not exactly the world's greatest expert on Christian exegesis, but I do know the Sharia extremely well. I know Islamic law like few people on earth. So, yeah. Now, Gnosticism in brief. They believe that liberation, not salvation, comes through secret knowledge. So Gnosticism, now I'm not going to approach this from the typical viewpoint that most would, because there's a certain angle, obviously, I need to approach this from for this discussion. Gnosticism is the idea that the physical world is cursed, it is evil, which Islam explicitly states within the Sharia, because you always see Sharia for Britain, right? You'll see these little protests and go on Google, Sharia for Britain, right? You'll see these little people with their banners, Sharia for America, Sharia law will conquer the world. Well, the Sharia says that the world of matter is cursed. It is evil, and they believe that the world of matter is evil, was created and ruled by a lesser god. The god is known as the demiurge. And the demiurge is said to be lower than humans. The Gnosticism has a dualistic system of belief which arose in the 2nd century AD. Now, people will say Gnosticism comes from before. Certainly, lots of these ideas do come from prior. There was a Jewish Gnosticism, but this is most explicitly a reaction to Christian doctrine, a reaction to the Christian faith, right? And Gnosticism does tend to move from geography to geography through time, and it adopts and adapts to the culture it's in and starts to incorporate some of those ideas, but it does retain certain essential concepts which remain. So it's a dualistic system of belief arising in the 2nd century, which claimed that matter is evil and that only spirit is good, and that liberation is attained through esoteric knowledge. Okay, so liberation is attained through esoteric knowledge. Now, understand though, when they speak of knowledge, this is a subjective term. They mean intuitive, non-rational, emotional knowledge. Okay, they do not speak about factual knowledge. They speak of, and of course, different code words can hide the word knowledge. Right? They might use different words to describe it. Right. So, right now, I will go into that again. We'll cover more depth again in other slides. So, Gnosticism is heretical according to Christian beliefs. Many scholars will try to say, or many pundits will say, like there were different versions of Christianity. Put it this way: imagine a version of I don't know, family law or family beliefs where pedophilia is okay, and a version where it's not okay. And they say, no, these are different versions of the same things. Like, no, that one is entirely contradictory to, it is entirely antithetical to. They're not different versions. The one is a repudiation, a complete rejection of the other. They're not different versions because their beliefs conflict incredibly, right? So they are heretical. So the name Gnosticism was applied to a variety of schools that differed in their reinterpretations of the Christian faith. The common principle of unity is standing in opposition to Christianity as received by the disciples. So they believe that Christianity is false or insufficient to afford absolute truth, with a hostile attitude to the faith. And they claim for themselves the possession of a superior knowledge higher than that of ordinary believers. Now, for those who have heard of the Strong's Concordance, here we've got James Strong, who wrote the Strong's Concordance of the Bible, telling us the Gnostics seldom pretended to demonstrate the principles on which their systems were founded by historical evidence or logical reasonings. They rather boasted that these were discovered by the intuitional powers of more highly endowed minds. I felt the vibrations, I felt the vibrations and they spoke to me. They constructed systems of speculation on subjects entirely beyond the range of human knowledge. So somehow they knew things that are not possible for humans to know. Now, note, these are a couple of phrases from the Bible. Now we're looking at doctrine. What is the dogma? What is the written doctrine? So I'm going to focus on written doctrine because I've had discussions where I discuss the Talmud, and I'm not a Jew and I'm not a Catholic, but I discuss some of these topics, and I will bring up the Talmud and I'll say, like, this is what the Talmud says. And the people say, that's not the real Talmud. You see, it's the secret Talmud. They bring it out on Friday nights in a secret basement in the synagogue, and then they read it. I'm like, is that, wow, it's crazy stuff. It's incredible. I didn't know that. Please send me a copy of the secret Talmud. I'm still waiting for a copy. Okay, I'm still waiting for a copy of the secret Talmud. So if you have a copy of the secret Bible, do send it. So the Bible does tell us in Mark 4:22, there is nothing hidden which will not be revealed, nor has anything been kept secret, but that it should come to light. Because Gnostics claim that Jesus kept secret knowledge for himself, and he shared it with, they have multiple different stories, but that he had secret knowledge. He had a secret book. He was, and this is actually an Islamic belief as well, but we'll get into that. So again, we're told in John 18:20, Jesus says, I have spoken openly to the world. I always taught in synagogues or at the temple where all the Jews come together. I said nothing in secret. So the doctrine, the from the foundation, the fundamentals of Christian doctrine states that Jesus did not hide any secrets. He just spoke truth. Right? There was nothing secret. He brought no secret doctrines. Well, the Gnostics claim to have secret knowledge, and so do the Muslims. Let's have a look at church fathers who discussed the Gnostics in the past. Ignatius, I want to forewarn you. This is 35 AD, BC, AD, sorry. I want to warn you not to get snagged on the hooks of worthless opinions, but instead to be fully convinced about the birth and suffering of the resurrection of Christ. So obviously a fundamental tenet of Christian belief is that Jesus was resurrected. Justin Martyr, these persons seem to be ignorant of the whole work of God, both of the genesis and formation of man at the first, and why the things in the world were made. Tertullian, who eventually became a heretic, if his death be denied because of the denial of his flesh, there will be no certainty of his resurrection. Similarly, if Christ's resurrection be nullified, ours is destroyed. Because if you can undermine the resurrection of Christ, there will be no forgiveness of sins. And therefore, if you can turn Jesus into a man, you can falsify his divinity, you then can deny man resurrection. Now, I will note, before I go to the last one, with Irenaeus, Marxism was originally a metaphysical philosophy. It was then applied, was then taken and applied as a moral and supposedly financial, political, economic, so not financial, economic system. Was then applied, it then became a political economic system. Marx intended it as basically a form of Gnosticism. So he intended it as this crazy philosophy. My bad, I can't take this call now. So what happened was that Marx intended to remake man in the image of man. And this has been the aim of the Gnostics. However, they want to consolidate the power and the control amongst themselves. And of course, people do claim that, well, the Jews are the Illuminati, and the Illuminati want to do exactly this. Well, the Illuminati would be Gnostics. Now, the Muslims are Gnostics. They claim to have founded the Gnostics. They claim to have founded the Freemasons. They claim to have founded the Freemasons. They claim to be Gnostics. And also, you'll notice that the greatest scholar in Islamic history, after Muhammad himself, Al-Ghazali, claims that the Sufis, who are the elite tier scholars within Islam, that they are the perfect Illuminati. I'll get to all of that. Irenaeus says, these men overthrow the faith of many by drawing them away under a pretense of knowledge from him who founded and adorned the universe. So from the early days of the church, there was already an issue with the Gnostics, and all of this is very critical to understanding where we lead to with this. Any questions or comments?
Please raise your hand if you have a question.
Saving all mine till the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, so Gnosticism comes in many varieties and interpretations, from ascetic to licentious. In other words, sexually immoral. Okay, a religious philosophy and its cosmogony. So in other words, a philosophy of salvation, the creation of the world. Cosmogony is how the world universe was created. It is a framework to explain the nature of God and creation, right? And it also discusses good and evil, right? And it talks about man and the purpose of life. So really, it's a replacement theology. Gnostics tend to focus on the inner life of the spirit, which they differentiate from the material life. Now, oddly, we can see this in modern day, where people say, I identify as, the internal belief, matter doesn't matter. Understand? That's why people can identify. I identify as a furry. I identify as a woman, and I'm going to go beat women up in the boxing ring because I'm a 6'5", 250-pound guy, but I identify as a petite little woman, right? So understand, matter doesn't matter to them. So these Gnostic ideas have taken hold in modern society. Licentious says lacking legal or moral restraints, which you will find is very much within Islam. You read its law, and I've covered some of these in previous shows on this channel. And it says here, especially disregarding sexual restraints and marked by disregard for strict rules of correctness, right? It's also antinomian. That goes against moral law, right? So let's have a quick look at Gnosticism within the modern day, how these ideas have affected modern society. Gnostics. So Gnostics felt that male-female distinction is a corruption. And someone's going to say, well, there was an obscure Gnostic sect that lived in this place that had a different, yeah, they were all over the place, okay? The distinction between men and women should be rejected because it is part of the useless creation order. The ideal is androgyny, a synthesis of male and female, so neither one nor the other. The outworking of this ranges from goddess worship to saying women need to become men to be saved. And that actually is written within some of the Gnostic texts. But the common theme is seeing the male-female distinction as defective. Men are bad, right? Boys are bad. Women are perfect. Women are great. Except, of course, women are bad as well. So you'll see some of this. But so the male-female distinction is defective. It's part of the fallen world of death because the spirit has no gender. Okay? And we have all these genderless beings around today who are fluid. You know, the identities they take on are just temporary, but they're actually genderless. Wonder where they got that idea. So, and they believe that we must escape this dichotomy if we are to find true life. Now, interestingly, there's a connection here with Allah. Again, we'll get into this over time, but Allah, so Jesus as God was spirit who became man, who was born of the virgin, became incarnate, and was made man, right? So you became man, flesh and blood. Whereas Allah cannot come to earth because Allah is spirit only, no shape, no one knows what he looks like, right? There's lots of speculation. He has two right hands. He has one big hand. He has a shin. He has two sides to his body, but they're both right sides because the left side is evil. But so there's lots of these speculations within Islamic theology, but he cannot come to earth because the matter is unclean. Only spirit is clean. So there are issues like this. And so, for instance, in the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, it states, when you make the male and the female one and the same, so that the male not be male, nor the female female, then you will enter the kingdom. And thus you have all this androgyny and Bob's your uncle. Now notice within Christian belief, you have good design. This is God's design. Genesis says, in the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them, and they are equal, but different, okay? Each sex is distinct. So Gnosticism does not have this belief. Simon Peter said, let Mary leave us, for women are not worthy of life. Jesus said, I myself shall lead her in order to make her male, so that she too may become a living spirit resembling males. For every woman who will make herself male will enter the kingdom of heaven. That is in the Gospel of Thomas, number 114. Does that sound like feminazism? I'll pause here.
It does. It seems like Gnosticism is basically an older version of postmodernism and the corrupt
Yes.
of Western society today.
Yep, you'll definitely start seeing links when you start to dig.
Thomas is the one who died in India?
Say again, please.
Thomas is the apostle who died in India?
That may be the case, but the thing is, these are all fictitious. When you start reading through the Gnostic stuff, I mean, for instance, now when you look at the authenticity of the Gospels, right, the New Testament, the Gospels are used constantly, even within Israel, even though it's not technically legal to have them because the Bible strips out the New Testament in Israel because, you know, rabbinic control is so tight there. And of course, they don't acknowledge Jesus nor the New Testament. Scholars and archaeologists, let's say explicitly archaeologists, utilize the New Testament constantly to either look for archaeological finds or to identify archaeological finds. Okay, so the New Testament is used constantly by archaeologists at university to identify what they find or to go and find things that they're looking for. Whereas the Quran is useless, utterly and totally useless for this purpose, as are every single Gnostic gospel. They're just fantasies. Whereas the gospel, in that sense, is actually a book of history. Any comment before I move on?
Questions, guys? Anyone?
Okay.
No.
Now, interestingly, the Gospel of Thomas contains 114 supposed sayings of Jesus.
It took
The
me a
modern
second,
Quran,
but yeah.
Sorry? John, yes, please.
It took me a minute, but yeah, I'm sorry. I'm kind of late to the show, and I haven't been able to make many of these. I'm JJ, by the way. So I've got a quick question for you. I mean, throughout your research, have you come across any indicators that Islam was basically founded and put into play by the Jesuit order for the Catholic Church?
The technical term for that claim is bullshit. So,
Go easy, go easy. JJ is one of the admins.
no, there is absolutely no credibility to that claim. For instance, you will find people that claim that Napoleon invented Islam, that the Swiss pharaonic order created Islam, that the Jews created Islam, that the Jesuits created Islam, that the Catholic Church created Islam before the Jesuits. I wish those 5 groups, or however many there are, would get into a boxing ring, get into a Royal Rumble, and then whoever wins, we go with that one. But all of them have totally contradictory ideas, and all of them, and I can tell you this, I've spoken with people. I know Islam. Now, look, I will make this claim, and I have I think I've got over 100 videos on my channel. I know Islam like few people. I know Islamic law like few people. Every single one of these people that come and make these claims, when I challenge them or invite them on to come and talk to me, they are clueless and they don't want to meet with me. They don't want to talk with me because they know nothing about Islam. Its history, its founding, they know zip about it. So no, there is no evidence. That is simply just trying to deflect and to blame someone else. That is not to say that the Jesuits don't have issues. That is not to say the Catholic Church doesn't have issues it needs to attend to, right? However, but this is simply just deflecting onto someone else, finding someone else to blame. I hope that answers your question. Because
yeah, it does. I just like and you're right. I know hardly anything about Islam. Actually, my nephew knows more about it than I do. And you know, I've heard these, you know, that particular claim. And with all the other research that I do, it just has not made it to my list of things to vet yet. And I figured with you having the expertise on it, you would you would have a better answer than anybody else I could ask. I'm sorry.
No. So if you listen to the very first episode I did, that would be very helpful to you. Also, if you look at my YouTube channel, I will send links. I need to send you those links to. I'll have to send you those links as well. I'll give them to you in a minute, Harry. Sorry, my bad. But on this point, when you look at the actual written doctrine, the dogma, right? They are completely contradictory. They are utterly contradictory. It's like saying that the Catholic Church created Islam to do whatever, but it's like saying that that America invented Russia because they needed Russia to be the broom that was going to clean Africa for them, right? Or it's like saying that I don't know, what are 2 things that are totally antithetical? It's like saying that ice created fire because they needed fire. I mean, fire is destroyed, by ice, and ice is destroyed by fire. They're totally antithetical. There is no relationship between them. Now, so there are issues there. There may be connections and overlap and collaboration and treachery, but no, that theory holds no water.
Okay, so you're saying that Islam itself is completely organic and separate from any other organization?
It stands on its own. It is entirely antithetical to every other organization that exists. It is antithetical to every other religion and organized movement that exists. It is entirely antithetical to every culture that exists. It hates everybody. Islam is Gnostic. We're going to get into that. That's why I'm doing the show, because Islam, you will see, is Gnostic, but it's its own twist on the idea of Gnosticism. It has taken Gnostic ideas and has added its own extremely warlike tendencies to it.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you. I've been meaning to ask you for a couple of weeks, but I haven't been able to make it in. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay. So the Gospel of Thomas, interestingly, contains 114 supposed sayings of Jesus. The modern Quran has 114 chapters. Just sheer coincidence. Now, Gnosticism in popular culture. So Gnosticism was successfully rejected by the early church, but it never went away. Okay, it's enjoyed a revival in today's popular culture, especially in what we call New Age thinking, which is really just Old Age thinking. It's Babylonian, Canaanite, pagan beliefs come back. Okay, we're all moving back towards paganism, and that's conflicting with Islam. So Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code, or maybe it's being co-opted by Islam. So Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code suggests that the Gnostic Gospels contain truth about Christ that a power-hungry church concealed, which is a very popular idea. So Gnostic ideas also play a key role in the many films that promote finding who you really are and being yourself and follow your heart, listen to your heart. What happened to rationality, reason, facts, discernment? Well, all out the window, right? I can pretend to be an umbrella today. I don't get wet anymore. Alistair McGrath explains that Gnostic themes chime in with contemporary ideals of self-discovery, self-awareness, self-actualization, and self-salvation, not to mention a dislike of authority, especially church authority. And John Lennon was nice enough to say the only true Christians were the Gnostics who believe in self-knowledge, becoming Christ themselves, reaching the Christ within, which, if you start to study the Sufi, is something that they themselves are attempting to do, to become the perfect man. Okay, so Gnosticism and Gnosis in Islamic law. So for that, I need to actually jump into Islamic law. So we're going to look at the most famous Islamic law manual in the world called the Reliance of the Traveler. Okay. Okay, yeah. So let me just actually go here. I've done this before, but I will now. So let's have a look at the Gnosis. Okay, so I'm going to search here. So you'll find, it'll take a moment. Let this thing just build up its database. Adobe Acrobat's a tad slower than I would like, even on a good machine. Okay, this is the world's most famous Islamic law manual. Okay, you will learn things. Actually, so what I'm going to do is to show you the kind of content it has. Let me first just do that. I'm going to search for the word ridda. Ridda is known as apostasy. So let's have a look and see what it says about apostasy. So all the content in the Quran, all the content in the Hadiths, and all of the Islamic books, all of that's a big, it's scattered all over the place. It's a big mess. The Sharia is all of this stuff arranged in topics, arranged in an index, arranged for, you can see here, this is the index for bodily wounds, for wounds to the head and face. The law as applied, all of these Islamic ideas applied to a whole bunch of different subjects. And in this case, apostasy from Islam, ridda. And it states here in the index, whoever voluntarily leaves Islam is killed. This is section O, which is justice. So let's have a look and see what the law tells us. Apostasy from Islam, ridda. Oopsie. And it says here, apostasy from Islam, leaving Islam is the ugliest form of unbelief, and it is the worst. Okay? Apostasy can come through in any number of forms. And the law tells us when a person who has reached puberty over the age of 12 is sane and voluntarily leaves Islam, he deserves to be killed. That's the law. Okay? That is the Islamic law. None of the schools differ on this point. Okay? Muslims will lie to you whole day, every day, because they are required to lie to you. So they have to ask him to repent, which is optional. And if he does, it is accepted. But if he refuses to repent and return to Islam, he is immediately killed. Muslims will tell you that scholars differ about the punishment. Yes, they differ. Some say you kill him right away the moment he tells you he's no longer a Muslim, he's apostatized. Others say wait 3 days. Some say kill him now. Some say kill him in 3 days. Some say hang him. Some say burn him. Some say stone him. Some say drown him. Some say beat him with a stick. So yes, they do differ about how they will kill you or when they will kill you. They do not disagree about the fact that they are going to kill you. Hopefully that's clear. Okay, does that make clear to everyone? And when we discuss that? Okay, so that's the law. That is the Islamic law. So let's have a look at Gnosis. Here we go. Within the Sharia, okay, in this version of the Sharia, Gnosis, there are 18 references, Gnostic, 5 references, Gnostics, plural, 3, and Gnostics, apostrophe 1. So let's have a look briefly. Here the scholars of Islam are talking about stopping at the first traces of gnosis. You must not, because you'll think you're awesome because you're feeling this amazing power, and you stop and you think you're the man, but don't. You have to continue. You cannot let this feeling take you over. It says here that all the other plebs that came before, all of these other Gnostic secret mystery religion sects, all these other idiots like the Freemasons, all these fools, they claimed to have attained to gnosis and contemplative knowledge of the divine, to have passed through the spiritual stations and the states, and to have reached nearness to Allah. So it says all of these other fools claimed so, but we, the Islamic scholars, we have attained to gnosis. So the Islamic scholars, the ulama, the alim, the students of knowledge, the people of knowledge, they have attained to the gnosis. They've reached the true gnosis. They've gone through the door of gnosis. They have comprehended through the gnosis. They've understood the ultimate reality of the world through the gnosis. Gnosis, 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 gnosis. And the Sufis, notice gnosis is Sufism. Okay, it's a tenet of Sufism. Gnosis, Sufi gnosis, 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 gnosis. So hopefully that gets the point across that gnosis is deeply embedded within Islamic law, and it's the domain exclusively of the Islamic scholars. Any comments or questions?
Any questions, guys? No. Nothing.
Okay, I'm going to drop the links in the chat for you so that you can then just pass it on to people. Okay, it's in your chat, Harry, and you can pass it on to people. Okay, so now, okay, liberation from. So they don't offer salvation. They offer a completely different view. So there's a guy that speaks about Gnosticism, is very well known on the internet, and he talks about freedom. There's a very deep voice. Freedom. We want freedom. Freedom from morality. Freedom from norms of society, right? So freedom from the norms that have created Western society. So the Gnostics tell us that humanity is alienated from God. This is also an Islamic claim, right? Because Allah is unreachable, unknowable. Allah is far away, cannot and has not and will not come to earth. Of course, if you read the Quran, he has come to earth. He is, clearly a presence here on occasion, but Muslims can't make up their minds. Whereas within the Christian belief, creation is good. God made a good creation. Creation is good. On the sixth day, God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good. So despite the fall and the curse of sin and death, Christians affirm that the created order retains a portion of the goodness with which it began. So it believes in the good of the world. Whereas Gnosticism is pessimistic in that sense. Okay, the world is evil. The world is sinful. Now, there's a point to that in Islam, so within Christianity, Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden, okay, into the world. The garden was in the world, so the world was good. Whereas in Islam, Adam and Eve lived in heaven, and they were kicked out of heaven and fell to earth. Okay, they fell to earth, which is exactly, they fell out of the paradise, the pleroma, as the Gnostics would call it, and they fell into the dirty world of matter. Gnosticism does not have a positive vision of creation, and nor does Islam. They deny a direct link between creation and God. Islam denies that Jesus had direct knowledge of God, and Jibreel, the angel Gabriel, the Ruh al-Quds, intercedes. That's the Holy Spirit. Okay, so this angel has to traverse the domain. However, within Christianity, of course, you've got the Holy Spirit, which is not an angel. But of course, when you read the Islamic text, then the Ruh al-Quds, the Holy Spirit, is also Muhammad. So there's a huge conflict within Islam that they need to deal with on that issue. Now, God has no contact with and remains outside of the created order within Gnosticism and within Islam. Allah cannot come to earth. In fact, I'm going to show something here. It may be within the text that I've already showed you, but let me go here anyway. And I'm going to show you within Islam. It states here within the Islamic law, where they speak of the sacred knowledge, right, which is the secret knowledge, the gnosis, they say that the world and what is in it are cursed. Okay? Islam teaches this is the final doctrine interpretation of the Quran and every of the major Islamic scripts, texts. The world and what is in it are accursed. And the only things that are not, the only things that are good in this world are the remembrance of Allah, known as the dhikr. And dhikr is most properly the domain of the scholars. Okay, that which Allah loves, someone with sacred knowledge, the gnosis, or someone learning. The sacred knowledge is the gnosis. This is not available. Sacred knowledge is not available to the lay Muslim, only the scholars. So, and of course, for the Gnostic, salvation entails not being saved from sin, but being saved from ignorance, knowledge, secret knowledge. Your communists, your socialists have secret knowledge. Okay, and oddly enough, within communism, you've got socialism, which is a moral system. It's a replacement moral system that presents itself as an economic system. It is the start of the process, at the end of which is communism. Communism is when the state withers away. Okay, the state withers away, and everyone is just fine somehow. God knows how, but you get back to the garden after this process, right? So it's their own little creation and whole theology. So it's an entire theology all on its own. Now, Gnosticism saves you from ignorance, right, through knowledge, secret knowledge. However, the secret knowledge is only available to the very few, and they have to administer the idiots that can't obviously comprehend this great knowledge. Islam saves us from the Jahiliyyah. Oddly enough, just by sheer coincidence, it's the time of ignorance before the coming of Muhammad. Strange, but yeah, sure, there's no connection. So you have the Jahiliyyah, the time of ignorance before the coming of Islam, which brought knowledge, interestingly enough. Any comments from anyone before I go on?
Questions? Please raise your hand. No.
Okay, is this making sense so far, Harry?
Of course.
This all making sense so far?
Of course, it's very important, very interesting.
I know the parallels with Gnosticism being shown. Okay, so salvific knowledge, the gnosis. Okay, so Gnosticism presents salvific knowledge. Basically, it's purely, it looks inside. It's purely internally focused. It basically says that you don't need God. You can just figure it out for yourself. You're smart enough. Now, I mean, man, I know people that can't manage a video recorder, couldn't back in the day, So, I know people that can't handle a toaster, and I've got to trust them with salvation. So, anyway, versus the Christian idea of a mighty salvific God. So in Hebrews, okay, God, who at various times in various ways spoke in time past to the fathers by the prophets, has in the last days spoken to us by his Son, whom he has appointed heir of all things, through whom he also made the worlds. So now the Old Testament and the New Testament, the Father, the Son, history, nature, creation, and so on, are linked with a God who is in the world and made the world, okay, who made the heavens and the earth. Gnostic salvation is not based on knowledge of faith in God, okay, but works and the imaginative treatment of a private vision, right? So it's about the imaginative, subjective treatment of a private vision. I pretend to be, right? So I pretend to be meaning, I'm a fire engine today, okay, as we have today. To know Christ is not in a sense to have knowledge about the historical man of flesh and blood, but to be personally related to the mythical heavenly being who liberates humanity from historical concerns, according to Lee, right? So the scriptures, according to Gnosticism, are discounted as history and reinterpreted as a springboard for speculation, right? Because Gnosticism doesn't want this to be the ultimate truth. They reject and deny the logos, logic, right? Which is how people can identify as, which just means I pretend to be. So therefore, they must reject the idea of, here's the biblical idea of an ultimate morality and an ultimate set of moral laws, and then, of course, implement their own. So salvation is defined in Gnosticism as an escape into the self. Now, very interesting, if you've read some works by M. Scott Peck, he talks about in one of his books, he speaks of not the road less traveled. He writes in a different book. He discusses the people of the lie, it's called. It's an exploration of the psychology of evil, right? It's an investigation into the psychology of evil. And he says in his practice, he was an agnostic who I believe became a therapist. Then he decided he became interested in religion and eventually got into Hinduism or Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity. Eventually decided that Christianity was the path he wanted to take, and eventually became a priest, I believe. now while still remaining as a therapist. And he stated that within his therapy, within his practice, he found that psychopaths, right, or people that became, shall we say, once socialized psychopaths, right, people who lost their moral sense, people who became evil. And he says, look, you will hear you must have heard the term the banality of evil. Okay, we're not talking about movie style raving maniacs here. What he said was that people who would submit to a higher authority before they did things remained moral. For instance, before you do something, you'll say, what would my mom think? What would my mother think of me? What would my father think of me? What would someone you look up to, what would God think of me? What would Jesus think of me? Right? Would my dog want me to do that? Understand? So when people had an outside authority that they respected, that they questioned their motives against, when they measured their actions against, okay, and found approval or disapproval, they would tend to remain generally moral and do good, okay, and feel remorse. However, when people rejected any outside authority and they accepted themselves as the highest possible authority, their concept of right and wrong, good and evil, was the only one that mattered. These people, he said, would descend into psychopathology and evil because they would do anything and they could justify anything because their idea of what it was all that mattered. So make that a note. He said this was how people descended. This separated evil people from good people. So salvation is defined as an escape into the self where introspection brings true knowledge. The solitary nature of the religious quest is a continuing theme of Gnostic literature. There is no real need for the other, right, community. The individual is a complete unit of faith and knowledge. The end result of the introspective search for the knowledge of God is that the God which one finds is nothing more than a reflection of oneself. This knowledge divide produces a spiritual elite versus what Christianity produces, which is ordinary people. Okay? So now I want you to note here the ulama, the ruling elite, the ruling clique within Islam, the elite scholars are called the ulama, okay, versus the singular alim. The term denoting scholars of almost all disciplines, right? Though referring more specifically to the scholars of the religious sciences. The only true sciences within Islam are the religious sciences. They have another term called the practical sciences, the amal. In Sunni Islam, the alim, okay, the ulama are regarded as the guardians, transmitters, and interpreters of religious knowledge and of Islamic doctrine and law, embracing those who fulfill religious functions in the community that require expertise in religious and judicial issues. So in other words, Muslims who follow Islam are simply following the law. They're not practicing religion. They're simply following the law. They're following the rules and regulations handed down to them. The religious observances are done by members of the ulama, right, who do it on behalf of the community. So they have to manage the community. They have to make sure the community follows the guidance that is given, and the elite do the worship for them. Now, notice from this is from the Encyclopedia of Islam. Like I said, it's 40 grand a pop to buy this thing. The ulama have long been seen as a distinct group, a regulated and structured body expressing the popular voice, constituting the solid framework of permanent government behind changing dynasties. Islam has had many dynasties, the Abbasids, the Umayyads, etc. But the ulama have remained as a permanent deep state within Islam. Their traditions, their people, their bodies, their structures have remained since the beginning. Understand? Do you understand the implication of this? Your thoughts before I go on, Harry?
So basically, even when they go to war between them, like you said, the Umayyads against the Abbasids and the Fatimids and all the rest, in the end, there is like this deep state of ulama, like orchestrating all of that.
Maybe not orchestrating it, but they certainly remain. They're the administrators that always remain behind. Right? They're not in the front. They hide in the back.
And they are all Sufis?
I'd say the majority of them will be, yeah. I would say so. That would be my guess.
So how can there be a conflict between Shia and Sunni if eventually all the Gnostic knowledge and everything which is sacred comes from Sufism?
So that is interesting because according to, if you read about the Sufis, right, you will learn in the literature that the bridge between Sunni and Shia, okay, where they have agreement, is at the level of the Sufi.
So that's the bridge that unites the insanity.
Yes,
Wow.
yes. So
Yeah,
all the squabbles
it's
at the
mind
bottom
blowing.
level.
It's mind blowing that I find so many parallels into modern society and all the heals, the sickness that we are recognizing. Part of these so-called resistance groups and our inability to actually do something is that every time I'm sitting down with people who are wishing to do something, the conversation is always going into, you have to think positively, there is no truth, no universal truth, I believe that the good will win and push the darkness away, my truth is my truth, your truth is your truth, everything is relative, all these ideas that doesn't allow us to identify an enemy. And I think
Yeah.
it's all coming from here.
Yes, you will start to see as we dig, as we get deeper and we go down different paths, you will start to notice as I bring up more of the Sharia. So I've got a lot of strands I need to weave together. I've got a lot of paths I've got to go down and come back from.
Yes.
So yeah, so hopefully we're starting to make sense. For them, this is a religious war. We need to understand their battleground. We've got to see things from their point of view. All right. So now, um, yeah. So okay, Saint Paul wrote. I'm not going to go too much into depth here, but Saint Paul wrote extensively against the Gnostics. Right. There are certain biblical passages that speak out explicitly against the Gnostics. Okay. Knowledge makes arrogant, but love edifies. Okay. So basically, so there's lots of this and other verses that explicitly talk out against Gnosticism, right? It's so this has been a major issue within the church. So in the Gnostics, okay, so let's actually read what he says in Corinthians, in the first epistle to the church in Corinth. Paul writes, "For consider your calling. There were not many wise according to the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble, but God has chosen the foolish things of the world to shame the wise, and has chosen the weak things of the world to shame the things which are strong," right? Etc. Etc. I'm not going to get into that now. So, but there are other verses when I go to another set of slides that they speak out explicitly against Gnosticism. But Gnosticism divides humanity into three categories: the somatics, who are content to exist on a bodily level. Then you have the psychics. Madame Blavatsky, I can feel your aura. I can sense. I can sense, are you there? Okay, the psychics who function at the level of mind, intellect, emotions. These are the common sense types who compose many in the church. Then you've got the pneumatics or the Gnostikoi, who are worthy of understanding the mysteries. So this hierarchical view of humanity is seen in the Gnostic, the Gospel of Thomas, because it retells the parable of the shepherd who leaves the 99 in pursuit of the one lost sheep. So in the New Testament Gospel accounts, right, the good shepherd chooses to go after the one lost sheep because the one needs him, not because he's unconcerned for the other 99. But in the Gospel of Thomas, upon finding the one lost sheep, the shepherd says to the sheep, "I love you more than the 99." So that's an abrogation of responsibility, right? This is focusing in the wrong direction. It's a different moral basis from what we work with. So there's also selective syncretisms of Gnosticism versus particularity in Christianity. So for biblical Christianity, there is an exclusive particularism. Jesus says, "I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. No one comes to the Father but through me." Oddly enough, if I show you in the Reliance of the Traveler, the link should have been up by now. When you look at section P75.2 about the Islamic belief in Muhammad, okay, Muhammad is the only way to paradise. Muhammad basically says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to Allah except through me." Muhammad is the counterfeit Jesus. He is a counterfeit replica of Jesus within Islam, with a different set of moral values. The Apostle Peter declares that the one way of salvation was through Jesus Christ. There is salvation in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven that has been given among men by which we must be saved. Now, this way of salvation is through Jesus of the incarnation, the born Jesus, right? And we'll get into this because Islam then denies this. So they completely adopt the Gnostic view. Okay. So he says that the Spirit of God, okay, Jesus has come in the flesh and is from God. Every spirit that does not confess Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, okay, which is already in the world. Gnosticism is a system of religious plagiarism. And we will see examples, extensive examples, and there's so many more that I could have used as we go forward through this, of Islam plagiarizing Jewish folktales, the Gnostic Gospels. It's crazy how much plagiarism they do. So the Gnostic appropriation of every useful symbol or idea is often referred to as the syncretistic aspect of the Gnostic, according to Lee, scholar. Okay, so as long as an idea or belief could be seen as spiritually useful, the Gnostic would appropriate it to his own version of the gnosis of God. So these people were just all over the place. Thus, Christ is merely a vague spiritualized being among many. Augustine was a member of a 2nd century Gnostic sect known as the Manichaeans. Augustine explains that for them, Jesus not only was revealed light, but was present everywhere. He signified man's life and man's salvation hanging on every tree. What is fascinating, if you go into what is called the Sirah, the Gospels of Muhammad, typically called the biographies, but literally his Gospels, where they speak of the divinity of Muhammad, which is hidden. It's not in the Quran, but this is something Muslims hide. They are very embarrassed by this coming public. And in a different time, I'll go into detail and show you examples and references to this. Muhammad becomes deified. So the short version is Muhammad is hung on a tree. So Allah takes a piece of his own light. He then forms Muhammad. He shapes Muhammad out of his own essence. Okay, so Muhammad is a piece of Allah. He's made of the very same essence as Allah. This happens before the creation of the universe, before the creation of the world. In some accounts, he's 13,000 years old. In some accounts, he's 360,000 years old. In some accounts, it's long before the creation of the universe. Allah makes him in paradise, and he hangs this representation of Muhammad on a tree. Wonder where the Muslims got that idea. Then Allah instructs all of the, and this essence of Muhammad, right, this piece that Allah shaped, this Muhammad that Allah shaped, this spiritual essence, right, purely spirit, worships Allah for 70,000 years. Then Allah takes him off the tree and puts him in a lamp, and he's the light of heaven. So first of all, Muhammad's light illuminates the throne room of Allah. Muhammad's light illuminates paradise. Muhammad's light illuminates the throne of Allah. The light coming out of the throne of Allah is the light of Muhammad. Then Muhammad creates the clay from which Adam is made, and thus Muhammad's light animates Adam, the first man. All right. Then a piece of Muhammad is broken off and put into Adam, and a piece of Muhammad is broken off and put into all the prophets, David, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, etc., etc. And they all, their essence, their holiness is the light of Muhammad. And Allah then creates the world, and then Muhammad is sent into the world. Okay.
Do you
And
remember
Muhammad
how
is the
many
light.
pieces?
Say again?
Do you remember how many pieces of Muhammad were
No, all the prophets, all the 140,000 prophets.
Oh, okay.
All the 140,000 prophets. I mean, I don't know if I've shown you before, but I'll do it another time. I don't want to get too distracted right now, but I can certainly bring it up and show all that. That's just a ton of material. But certainly Muhammad is then little pieces of him is broken off. Okay, so Muhammad is the light. Now understand the Sufis, the Sufi Gnostics, the Sufi scholars, their form of worship, their form of occultism or mysticism is called light mysticism. Actually, no, I'm going to bring up something because I think it's very important that I do. I can do this right now. Let me find this reference and show it to you guys. So, there we go. I'm going to bring up something so you can see this. This is Al-Ghazali. Okay, Muhammad Al-Ghazali. This is the most revered scholar of Islam after Muhammad himself. Okay, this man is critically important within Islam, and I'm going to bring this up. So notice what he says here. Okay, he speaks here of those who stopped short of complete illumination, identified al-Mutta, that's Muhammad, with Allah, just because he moves, blah, blah. It's all this weirdness. Okay, so basically the understanding of the Amr, okay, the word of command, the how Allah creates, okay, contains much that is obscure and too difficult for most minds. So the knowledge of the Gnostics, the knowledge of the Islamic scholars is too difficult for your mind because you're too dumb to understand, okay? Besides going beyond the scope of this book, and then Al-Ghazali says that the perfect Illuminati perceived that Al-Mutta, the obeyed one, is not more than the highest other than absolute deity, and is related to him, to Allah, as the sun to essential light. So Muhammad al-Ghazali, the number one scholar in Islam, calls the Sufis the perfect Illuminati. Any comments on that?
Only that I encountered a Sufi on another chat and attempted to lure him to discuss Sharia, at which he completely lost it.
Mm-hmm. They're not allowed to. It's illegal for a Muslim to discuss the Sharia because it would lead you to, because you do not want to use the Sharia for what they would call a righteous or legal purpose. You would use it to undermine Islam. For them to do so would be A, to reveal the secrets of the Ummah, the Islamic nation, that is treason and punishable by death, right? And it would undermine the Ummah. So they cannot do this. So they would be leading you to do something which is incorrect, and they would be revealing a secret. So both of these are treason to the Ummah.
Interestingly, I was subsequently banned from that particular chat, and it's one that I've been contributing quite a lot of my understandings to.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Yeah, I can discuss at some point if you want. I can discuss the Sharia. I know it very, very well. I know the Sharia better than anyone else I know. To be quite blunt, I know it better than anybody else I know.
Lloyd,
It's
can
what I
you
specialize
explain the
in.
last line again? I don't understand it. Al-Mullah, they obeyed
Neither
one.
do I, to be honest. So I haven't read this in detail. To be honest, I haven't read it. But the obeyed one is Muhammad as well as Allah, because in the Sharia, Muhammad is synonymous. Actually, let me show this to you. It's easier if I just do that. See here. Okay, so let me go into the Sharia. So this is on Islamic morality. Okay, this is a thesis on why you follow the scholars, the authority of the scholars, and how the scholars are the inheritors of the power and the responsibility of managing the ummah from Muhammad. They are the regents of Muhammad. Muhammad is the regent of Allah, and they are the regents of Muhammad. But it states here that within the Sharia, okay, within the Islamic law, the basic premise of this school of thought, and actually I'll go to the beginning, I'll cover this in depth, but the lawgiver, synonymous with Allah or Muhammad, his messenger. So this is shirk. This is the ultimate sin in Islam, to ascribe partners to Allah. But the lawgiver, because Muhammad speaks with the same force as Allah, he may as well be Allah. The two are synonymous. So does that make sense?
So they are equal in importance in Islam?
Yes. In the Sharia, in the law of Islam, in the final interpretation, yes.
Yeah, isn't it that Muhammad's name is on the throne of Allah?
His light illuminates the throne of Allah. So Muhammad's light, it may be that his name is on it, but certainly Muhammad's light illuminates the throne of Allah. His light illuminates the throne room of Allah. His light illuminates paradise. His light illuminates the world.
So when Muhammad is absent, poor Allah is sitting in complete darkness or something?
Yes.
That's very sad.
It's Islamic. Yes, sorry?
It's supremely narcissistic, isn't it?
Welcome to Gnosticism. You know everything, right? You're super smart. That's the whole problem with it, yeah? Yeah, but you're correct. I mean, that's 100% correct. That's what it leads to. Because you do not have any outside authorities that you respect that you would question your decisions with. So understand, I'm going to have
Lloyd, 1 second, please. We have a question from Idaljo.
Sure.
Can you go ahead?
Hello, I am new.
Hello there.
So this lecture is about the critique of Islam morality.
It's a discussion about Islam, its Gnostic links, and all of the connections in terms of Islamic mysticism. So it's an exploration of Islam, and I'm showing the connections within the Sharia and the fiqh.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right.
Go ahead, thank you.
So I'm just going to briefly run through this. All right. All the links are available, and all these videos are on my channel. The links are available, and so I'm not sure what his point was, but I guess he was trying to wind himself up for something. Who knows? So the mind is unable to know the rule of Allah about the acts of those morally responsible, except by means of his messengers and inspired books. That would be the Quran, because according to Islam, the other books are corrupted. The Bible has been corrupted, the New Testament, the Old Testament, every other book is corrupted. Only the Quran is perfectly preserved. Nothing else is valid. So while the Muslims are to respect and to follow the other books no longer exist in their uncorrupted forms. So therefore, they must reject them and only follow the Quran. The morally responsible is a Muslim from the age of 12 onwards, right? Who is now considered an adult and responsible for his actions and can suffer the death penalty, can pay fines, go to prison, etc. Okay, so your mind is too small and too weak to know the rule of Allah, okay, without the means of his messengers. Now, of course, the Quran is available to you, but you're not allowed as a Muslim to interpret the Quran because you're a mukallaf. A mukallaf is someone who is subject to the rule of Allah. And a mukallaf must then decide to do what's called taqlid, to follow the doctrine of taqlid. Taqlid is to follow a scholar. And this makes you a mukallid, okay? So you're a mukallid who follows taqlid, you follow a scholar who then tells you what the Quran says and what to understand from it. And of course, Muhammad's dead, so you need to follow the scholars. Now they speak here, and I will show you some of this. So now it says within Islamic morality, within the Sharia, it cannot be said that an act which your mind deems good is therefore good in the eyes of Allah. So in other words, do not trust your conscience, nor that you should do this, okay, that its performance is called for and that you are rewarded by Allah for doing it. You don't know that if what you think is good, nor that whatever your mind says is bad in the eyes of Allah. You can be wrong, right? Your conscience could well be wrong, and that its non-performance is called for, and that you are punished by Allah. It says, do not trust your conscience. We will tell you what's right and wrong. The basic premise of this school of thought is that the good of the acts of those morally responsible is what the lawgiver, that being Allah or his messenger, has indicated is good. But someone has audio coming through, Harry. Oh, sorry. So the basic premise of this school of thought is that the good of the acts of you, basically the morally responsible, is what the lawgiver, Allah or his messenger, has indicated is good by permitting it or asking it to be done. So what is good is given to you in the Quran and the Sunnah, and most explicitly within the Sharia, which is the disambiguation of everything. And the bad is what the lawgiver has indicated is bad by asking it not to be done. And they tell you here, good is not what your reason considers good. You cannot trust your reason, nor is the bad what your reason considers bad. The measure of good and bad, according to Islam, is the sacred law, not reason. Any comments on that before I continue?
I think Hidalgo still have something to say. Can I enable his microphone?
Yeah, go ahead.
1 second, I lost him. Where is he? Here he is. Go ahead again, Hidalgo.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
It seems like this is made to bow to authority,
Yes.
like the demand, and the caliph. I don't know how he said.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yes.
it's like a power move, trying to teach people this.
Yes, you are to submit to authority. Your own mind is not to be trusted. You'll be told what is good. You'll be told what is bad. If Muhammad diddled a 6-year-old, then that's good. And if your mind tells you otherwise, your mind is wrong. The sacred law, we the scholars, will tell you what's good. That's exactly the case. Now notice, okay. Now I'm going to talk about the scholars. So because since we're on this road, the superiority of sacred knowledge over devotions. The devotions here are the 5 pillars they're referring to. Okay. So in other words, those who know. So Nawawi, now this is from the Quran 39:9, are those who know, the ones with the knowledge, the sacred knowledge, the gnosis, and those who do not know equal. No, of course they're not, right? So only the knowledgeable of his slaves fear Allah. So understand, Allah raises those of you who believe and those who have been given knowledge, whole degrees. So the ones who have knowledge are greater than the ones who do not know. The lay Muslim does not know. He's not allowed to know. I'll cover that. The Prophet said, whoever Allah wishes well, he gives knowledge of religion. So Allah does not wish the lay Muslim well because he does not give him knowledge of religion. He just gives him regulations to follow. And it says here, Muhammad said, the superiority of the learned Muslim, the ulama, the alims, over the devotee, the lay Muslim, is as my superiority over the least of you. So the scholar is as high over the basic lay Muslim as Muhammad is over the least of the Muslims. So the scholars are on the same level right now as Muhammad. They are his voice. They are his authority in the world. Okay? So the superiority of the learned Muslim, the scholar, over the devotee is like the superiority of the moon over all the stars. The learned, the scholars of today, are the heirs of the prophets. The prophets did not give money, but they left sacred knowledge. And whoever takes it has an enormous share. They've got lovely flowery language. And it states here, the world and what is in it are accursed. Now I'm going to find another term. Okay, so now, right. So here's a hadith. Seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim, right? And oddly enough, it says that this hadith, although it is a weak hadith, it is true, because Muslims will always turn around and say, well, that's a weak hadith. Well, the Sharia itself utilizes weak hadith, but I can get into hadith on another day. Now, it states here within the Sharia, section A4.2, the basic obligation of Islam is to believe in everything brought by the messenger, by Muhammad, with absolute conviction, free of any doubt. Whoever does this is not obliged to learn the evidence of the scholastic theologians. So in other words, you should believe with absolute certainty, with no evidence whatsoever. The Prophet did not require of anyone anything but what we have just mentioned. So Muhammad wanted people to believe what they were told with no doubt whatsoever, with no evidence either. So the scholars explain what befits common people is to refrain from discussing the subtleties of scholastic theology, because when they start to give information to the lay Muslim, corruption, difficult to eliminate, will find its way into their basic religious convictions. It is fitter for them to confine themselves to contentment with the above-mentioned absolute certainty. So they want you to be both ignorant and completely convinced. Any questions or comments to that?
Questions or comments?
This is an enormous weakness, isn't it?
Say again, please.
This is really the biggest weakness that they have.
It gives them a lot of cannon fodder, I'll tell you that. A lot of very, very believing cannon fodder who are highly motivated but completely idiotic. But is this making the idea of the Islamic mindset, the Islamic civilization, as a completely different one to the West? Are you starting to see some of the differences now, and how they've borrowed from? We're starting to get into it only how they've borrowed from Gnosticism, but how they're different, and so on, and how they have a completely antithetical mindset to the Western Christian mindset, because we are based on Judeo-Christian tradition, even though others might disagree, but we are based upon that tradition, and this is a completely opposite tradition. Any comments or thoughts from anyone?
Yeah, I can see a parallel that J.R. Tolkien showed us with the orcs.
Mm-hmm.
Don't we have the same thing with the Vicar of Christ, the Pope, as the authority on earth instead of Christ? The same thing with
It's
the
very
scholar.
different. These guys have legislative authority. These are legislative authorities. This is canon law is not the same as legislative law. These guys are political, military, civic, commercial, and legal authorities. The Pope doesn't issue parking tickets.
I hear you.
Yeah. So okay. So I'll just move on. Sorry.
Let's continue.
Okay.
Please.
So look. Yeah, I'll go another few minutes, right? I'll wrap this up and I'll continue next week. So I'm trying to lay a foundation and then I'll dig more in. And we're going to dig into some of the crazy occult connections. We're going to get there, but I need to really... Okay, so Okay. So, yeah. So in the Kitabi, now notice I've mentioned this man's life and salvation hanging on every tree. So let's have a look. In the Kitabi Ahwal al-Qiyamah, we read the following account. It is recorded by tradition that Allah created a tree, which is stolen from the Jewish idea of the tree of life, with 4,000 branches and called it the tree of life. Then he created the light of Muhammad in a veil of white pearl of the shape of a peacock and placed it upon that tree where it praised Allah for 70,000 years, right? And of course, this is stolen from Revelation 2:7. To the one who conquers, I will grant to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. I don't ask me to interpret that. I'm not a Christian exegete. So, right. And I told you the rest of the story, but I can fill in that. I can go down that road another time and show you how Muhammad is deified in the Sirah, in his Gospels. So, Gnosticism is a cult of special knowledge. It's from the Greek gnosis, or knowledge. Now, while the word is used in the New Testament, it's utilized in a different sense, whereas in Islam, it's used in a completely different, again, in a contrasting sense. So there's an overlap with Allah. So first of all, in Islam, there's a belief in a remote, unknowable, supreme, absolute one deity. The monad, which in Islam is known as the Tawhid. It's the identical view of God in both Islam, which is why Islam cannot have the same God as the Christians. They will claim they follow that's an Abrahamic religion, the God of Abraham, but this is not true. There is no differentiation in the monad, and neither is there in the Tawhid of Islam. The monad is beyond human thought, whereas we are made in the image of God. We can understand God because we are made from God, whereas in Islam you are separated from God. Human thoughts cannot reach the monad. It is beyond comprehension. All of this is the same whether it's Islam or Gnosticism. The divine monad is beyond the material and rational world, whereas we had Jesus who came to the rational material world, brought the Logos, right? He was the Logos, and he lived in the world. The world was good, whereas in Islam, the monad, and within Gnosticism and Islam, the monad is beyond the material and rational world. It cannot be comprehended with the rational mind, whereas within the Christian worldview, if there is a divine watch, if there's what's the term? If there's a divine clock, there must be a divine clockmaker. Okay. And if we are made of the same substance as the creator, we should be able to figure out the world. We must be able to discern the rules, the rational rules that make up the world. Right? Allah does not enter the dirty physical realm. Thus, the Christian incarnation is unacceptable. And they reject this. If you go into the theology, you'll see that they are utterly and totally against Christian thought and Jewish thought as well, and theology. Think of the polemic emphasis on Jesus as a baby. So in Islam, Jesus as a baby is unclean, he's filthy. Okay, I've shown you guys within Ibn Qayyim, where Ibn Qayyim talks about Christians going to church and then urinating on themselves in their pants on the benches, right? That they will be peeing on themselves and peeing on the floor in the church on the benches. I think I showed you that last time. Okay, so they speak of Jesus who was in the inside of a woman's womb, dwelled in there for a period of time amidst the location where the sexual organs joined, and he dwelled there for 9 months, wobbling between excrement, urine, and menstrual blood, and then he ended up being slapped on the cheeks by the Jews. Okay, they're big into this whole idea, right? So they're big into this whole thing about him being near filth. Blood is filthy, it's najis in Islam. So is urine, so is excrement. All three are vile, dirty substances, right? They create ritual impurity. The divine monad is beyond the material world, okay? And the monad continuously emanates lower divine beings called eons. And Islam also has the same concept as continuous creation, right? So biblically, God creates Adam and Eve, and they procreate. In Islam, every child is a new creation. Thus, there is no original sin that is transmitted. So these are very different theological concepts. Now, I'll end off in a few minutes. So now let's look at the Nicene Creed, which specifically states that Jesus was born, made incarnate as a refutation of these Gnostic heresies. He became incarnate from the Virgin Mary and was made man. So the divine was taking physical form. The divine entered the world, okay, entered the world of matter. And this was a crazy idea back in the day. So the monad emanations have an element of the divine essence. Angels and other powers are in the spectrum, so they are worshipped. We are apparently, supposedly as humans, within the spectrum. We are trapped in these fleshy bodies and have to escape the prison of flesh, escape the world, past the guardians, which is a very Islamic view as well. So the lowest heaven is guarded by a guardian. And in Islam, the lowest heaven is guarded by a guardian. And you've got to give him the secret password and you can get out. So Jesus is on the spectrum, but Jesus is not a supreme being within Gnosticism or various other Gnostic beliefs. In Colossians, we see here, see to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy, which depends on human tradition and the elemental spiritual forces of this world rather than on Christ. For in Christ, all the fullness of the deity lives in bodily form. So a lot of the New Testament was a repudiation of the Gnostic beliefs that were then starting to become present at that time, or as a reaction, was a pagan reaction to the idea of Christianity. Christianity ran foul and ran completely contrary to the religions of the day, the pagan religions of the day. What's interesting is that Muslims will say that Christianity was pagan religion. However, when you read the pagans, they're saying, "Oh my God, these Christians are destroying our pagan religion. We need to fight against it. They're taking pagans away from our religion." So yeah. Okay, briefly then, Council of Nicaea 325, the first council, right? This happened in Iznik in Turkey, and it was called by Emperor Constantine I. So he hoped that a general council of the church would solve the severe problems created by Arianism, a heresy that was first proposed by Arius of Alexandria. He claimed that Christ is not divine, but a created being, which is what Islam says as well. That's the very same claim that Islam makes. Arianism was condemned as a heresy by a majority of the council, a very overwhelming majority, and the Nicene Creed was created in response to this heresy. Let's go through a few pages on this, because you will hear that the Nicene Creed affirmed that oh yeah, Jesus wasn't divine, but now he is, or it created the whatever. Just so many stories. We believe in one God, because Muslims will say we believe in three gods. No, we believe in one, right? So that was a very clear affirmation against the Gnostics, the Father, the Almighty, because they believe that Yahweh, the God of the Jews, the God of the Christians, right? Assuming that that's what, I mean, everyone can argue about that later, but that this was the same God that created the heaven and the earth, whereas these guys are saying, no, the God who created the earth was an evil God, okay, a filthy God, and that's against the Gnostics. Maker of heaven and earth, again, against the Gnostics, of all that is seen and unseen, because the unseen world is the world of spirit, and the seen world where we live is the filthy, dirty world of matter. Again, that's a refutation against the Gnostics. We believe in one Lord, Jesus Christ, the only Son of God, against the Gnostics. He was not a creation, eternally begotten of the Father. He existed forever. This is against the Arianisms, and of course the Arianists, and of course the adoptionists. Adoptionists said that Jesus, through his own effort, through his own knowledge, his own hard work, his own works, achieved the favor of God, and God said, "Well, you're a good guy. Let me deify you. Let me make you special." That's what the adoptionists did. God from God, light from light, and Muhammad is light from light. My good grief! When you read the Sirah, you'll see that was to refute the Arians, true God from true God, the same essence as the Father. Okay, begotten, not made. Okay, against the Arians. So he wasn't made. He was not understand. He wasn't a created being. He was begotten, right? Of one being with the Father, exactly like Muhammad is one being in the Sirah with Allah. Through him all things were made. So hopefully this becomes clear. So I'll do one last one. For us men and for our salvation, he came down from heaven by the power of the Holy Spirit. He was born of the Virgin Mary and became man. So this is a deliberate refutation of Docetism and Ebionism. So there are multiple heresies being addressed within the Nicene Creed, okay, the major belief of the Christian faith. Let's have a look at something within the Islamic creed. So let's look at a very popular creed called the Al-Aqidah Al-Tahwiyya, right? This is the basic faith of Islam, okay? Allah is one without any partners. There's nothing like him. There's nothing that can overwhelm him. He's eternal without a beginning, without end, and so on, okay? So this is what Muslims have to believe about Allah. This is their basic creed. He allotted humans to fixed lifespans. But let's go to number 75. Let's go here. You may have heard these words before in your life. Allah knows best. Well, the reason they say that is because within their creed, when our knowledge about something is unclear, in other words, when we don't know and we are absolutely clueless, we have to, by rote, by instruction, say, Allah knows best. Who's heard that term before? I'll pause here for a minute.
It opens the second chapter of the Quran, doesn't it? Alif, Lam, Mim. And then the subnote, according to the Al-Azhar Quran I've got, is Allah knows best.
Well, yeah. So obviously they've taken from that and they've obviously written everything around that. But this has now become gospel. It's become creed for them. This is their creed. So when they don't know, they have to say Allah knows best, because they're supposed to be ignorant. Understand? They, as we saw within the Sharia, they meant to have complete certainty without knowledge. So yeah, thank you for that. So Allah knows best. This is something that they have to say. So that is the ultimate reason why they've been indoctrinated by their imams from the time they're 4 or 5 years old to say this. Okay, I'm going to go back here. So right, so this is the reason. So there were things against modalism, against the pneumatomachians, the spirit fighters. There was just all sorts of stuff. Okay, so the Nicene Creed was a refutation of heresies. Okay, it was not to make Jesus, or whatever people said. There's lots of stories, but that was the reason behind it. Okay, to establish the doctrine that was the Orthodox doctrine of. It was to reinforce the Orthodox doctrine of the church and to make sure there were no loopholes that could be exploited. So I'll pause here. So let me jump ahead. I'm just going to cancel this. I'm going to jump ahead quickly to some stuff. I want to show you something. I briefly showed you about Baphomet. I want to show you, let me show you something about the Ku Klux Klan to show you where we'll go next time, okay? Now, few people are aware that the holy book, let's look at the Ku Klux Klan. Few people are aware that the holy book of the KKK is called the Koran. Right? Who of you was aware of that little factoid? That the KKK's holy book is called the Koran. You may have heard of an Islamic book called the Quran.
They have a lot of imagination with names, you know?
Right. So notice here they've got they're very big on symbolism. They've got here a Templar horse. Notice the Templar cross. Okay. Now we will find out that the Muslims claim to have co-opted, eventually to have basically taken over the Templars, right? And to infected the Templars with Sufi ideas. So the holy book of the KKK is called the Quran, not the Bible, not the Bible, the Quran, okay? Which is derived from the Islamic Quran. Now, the earliest symbol, what few people know, is the earliest symbol of the KKK in their oldest uniform. There's only one surviving. They've destroyed all the rest. There is only one known surviving copy of the earliest KKK uniform available today. Okay? And the earliest symbol of the KKK was not a cross. The first symbol of Islam was the Islamic crescent and star. So their book was the Quran, and their first symbol was the crescent and star of Islam. Okay, any comments on that, Harry?
No?
Okay, so let's go. This is an early photograph from the early 1900s or the late 1800s. I have the date somewhere. It will come up. This is someone, well, this is actually, the guy's name is known. This is part of the archive of various universities and other books. This is the oldest known surviving uniform of the KKK. What you have here is the Islamic crescent and star, just turned 90 degrees. Right, this is another photograph as well. This was actually a postcard. You could have bought this on Amazon. I don't think it's available today, but these were postcards about the KKK. And here it is, the Islamic crescent and star. Okay, the KKK were Islamic. Now, if we go here to R.J. Brunson, there's a typo in the book. So please don't go, well, you know, there's a typo there. I've just written exactly what was in the book. I know it's a typo, okay? There was a typo in the original, and I've just faithfully added the typo as it is. It should be a U, it's Pulaski. I had someone go on, well, this is, you can't trust anything now because you got a typo. Like, idiot. This is an original Klansman wearing an original robe, believed to be the only original robe in existence. The date for the booklet is March 25th, 1924. Okay, the guy's name is R.J. Brunson. He was 82 years old at the time. So they say this is likely the same man in the same uniform as above, but I'm not absolutely sure. The photo was taken near Pulaski, Tennessee, 1913. This is from the website Klan History, but we also have a website from the University of Tennessee that also goes to the same information. They've got copies of the books and the photos. The collection was given to them to maintain. So understand, so you've got connections. So they obviously eventually switched to the cross because maybe they didn't want to give the game away. Their job was to smear the Christian church. The job was to undermine Christian church, right? To misrepresent. But this is what people who infiltrate and who run propaganda campaigns would do. Any comments on this revelation here that the KKK originally had Islamic symbolism.
Well, I know that KKK evolved from how do you call this? The Democratic Party, and
Yep.
since the Truman and other Democratic presidents were also carrying a lot of Masonic Muslim symbolicism, then I'm
Yep.
not surprised anymore. It makes sense.
Right. We'll get into some of that. We're going to go through some of that, but I just wanted to show you where we're going. The Shriners.
Do we have a question? Yeah, the Shriners.
Sure. Yep.
Lunchbox, do you have a question?
I was actually just going to point out that was actually a Masonic symbol as well, but you guys are already on top of that.
Yeah.
Excellent. Please tell me more. Please go ahead. I'd like to hear more. Love to hear your thoughts.
Well, that's the symbology for the shrine. The Holy Order of the Shriners.
Yep.
So,
yep. I will get in. Yep.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So look. I'll spend a few minutes. I'm going to repeat this the next time I come through, because I'm going to run through this again. Okay. But briefly, what I'll do is just to end off, just show you where we're heading with this and why. So the Masons. So every Shriner is a Mason. Okay. Not every Mason is a Shriner, but every Shriner is a Mason. The Masons, once they get to a high enough degree, although they've lowered the standards now, but once they got to a high degree, once they became a Master Mason, you could then become eligible to join a higher level of Mason called the Shriners. Okay, so you had to be a high-level Master Mason before you could become a Shriner, and which was very, very interesting. So the Shriners, now these are Shriner fezzes, these are Shriner caps. So the fez originally is a symbol of the Ottoman affiliation, okay, a symbol of Ottoman affiliation and adherence to Islam. It originates in Fez, Morocco. So in 1033, 6,000 Jews were killed in Fez, Morocco. And there were further massacres in Fez in 1276 and 1465. There is a report that I've seen of 50,000 Catholics, which I cannot confirm. So that seems to be a false report. There is a report of 120,000 Jews being killed in or around that area. And I can't find it again. I have seen it. I have read it. I cannot find the source, but that may well be true. I can't confirm or deny that one, but this I can. This one I did find. Now, this fez was adopted as the Shriners' official headgear in 1872. There's some other facts about it I'm going to avoid because I don't have the evidence in front of me to show. Now, notice that you've got your Muslim on this, okay? You've got this symbol here, this crescent and star. This symbol also goes back to the Egyptians, okay? Which is also very important. That's the cult of Isis, okay? We need to maintain this as well, the cult of Isis, that symbol. The sword of Muhammad, okay? And of course, Muslim with multiple swords, right? Now you've got Islam. So this is fairly unambiguous. It's an Islamic organization. Medina, this is the city of the Prophet where he died, okay? That's where the holy mosque is. Well, Mecca and Medina are the two holy cities of Islam. Muhammad, I'd say that's pretty clear. We're not getting, ISIS. Very, very interesting. ISIS on this thing. Now, keep this in mind as well, because there's a Gnostic influence here, which would, again, the cult of ISIS. Okay. And now, note here. Sorry?
It's related to Osiris and Horus from ancient Egypt.
Well, no, what few people realize is that the cult of ISIS didn't originate necessarily. The Egyptian mystery schools don't necessarily originate in Egypt. They're 3rd century. They were reaction. So people had co-opted some of the old ideas, and there were Roman reaction in the 3rd century. So in the view of some scholars, the greatest rival to Christianity in Rome in the 3rd century was not traditional Roman paganism, but the Egyptian mystery cult of Isis.
But not originated in Egypt?
No, they took some of those ideas, but the problem is that a lot of these ideas, they die out. Then someone takes the idea, modifies it, mixes it, peas in the bowl, poops in it, stirs it, and out comes something a little fresh, a mixture of a bunch of things, right?
Here's something that I've come across, and I don't know whether it's relevant or not. And I saw somewhere that because there's a link between the Vatican and Switzerland, and the original name that I was told of Helvetia, which is Switzerland today, is the land of the sisters of Isis. And I find in Switzerland enormous amounts of Egyptian iconography. The obelisk is everywhere, as it is at the Vatican. So there's this ancient Egyptian link that's not clear.
Yeah, look, I'm going to leave it at that. I can't speak. I don't know too much about that, but I've seen a lot of propaganda that's just completely bogus, but the thing is, I'm not discounting that there may or may not be connections. Now, that's not to say the church is like Islamic but certainly people will infiltrate, people will have their own agendas, and the whole point is to undermine and infiltrate and do things. So yeah, look, it may or may not be, but that's outside of the scope of what I'm talking about, and it's outside my realm of knowledge at this point. But that I will say this, that whenever I start researching and I start looking at the documented sources, I start looking at the actual doctrine, I start finding just cracks start appearing very readily. I want to mention something. This is a newspaper in the US, right? And they speak here of the York Rite, which goes from the entered apprentice to the Knights Templar. Here's a reference in this long, lengthy article that was published in a newspaper in the US. Let me see what newspaper this was. We'll just give me a second. I'll tell you where this was uncovered. This is from the San Francisco Call, 8th of June, 1895. It's in the California Digital Newspaper Collection from the UCR.edu. So University of California R something .edu, right? It's also found at newspapers.com, clip Shiner info. So anywho, so understand, it states here that these guys, these Shriners, claim that they were connected to the Knights Templar. And remember, the Knights Templar were supposedly worshipping Muhammad. I'll run through. Now, let's look at the Islamic Shriners. Here's exactly the same symbol as the KKK had, just rotated 180 degrees, right? This is looks like a white guy, right? Among the oaths of the Masonic Shriner organization is one that says, "May Allah, the God of the Arabs, the Muslims, and the Mohammedan, the God of our fathers, support me to the entire fulfillment of the same. Amen, amen, amen." If it's Muslims, they'll say, "Ameen, ameen, ameen." So these are Shriners making oaths, Islamic oaths to Allah. Okay, I'll continue. These are Shriners, Quran. This is a white dude. Now the question is he a crypto-Muslim? These are white Americans, okay, well-established Americans who we know they're Masons because you cannot be a Shriner without being a Mason. Are they crypto-Muslims? Everyone complains about crypto-Jews. Nobody talks about crypto-Muslims. Now the Shriners, as you can tell, are not Islamic at all. Now let's look at their founding book. It's History and Pleasures, together with the origin and history of the order, okay, the ancient Arabic order, the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine, right, written by Dr. Walter Fleming of the 33rd degree Mason and William Patterson, 33rd degree Mason. The Order of the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine was instituted by Caliph Ali, the son of Muhammad, okay, whose name be praised, and son-in-law of the Prophet Muhammad. God favor and preserve him. Very, very interesting. The salutation of distinction among the faithful, the Muslims, is Salaam alaikum, peace be with you. So they are utilizing 100%, they're not Muslim because they're 100% Muslim. The secret knowledge symbolized by the crescent, okay, has always had its devotees in every age in all civilized countries. It is the master key to all wisdom, right? And it says here, we always look to the east for light, and we find it the beautiful emblem of the newborn light, the crescent. Okay, so and notice now, let's go to the Bible. Ziba and Zalmunna said, "Rise yourself and fall upon us, for as the man is, so is his strength." And Gideon, the sword of Gideon, arose and slew Zeba and Zalmunna, and he took the crescents that were on the necks of their camels. So the concept of the crescents in here is the sacred knowledge, the pagan, the cultic crescent goes back to the Old Testament. And the weight of the golden earrings that he requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, besides the crescents and the pendants and the purple garments worn by the kings of Midian, and besides the collars that were about the necks of their camels, again in Judges. So understand, the concept goes back to the Bible, and these were the enemies of the Jews, and they're the enemies of God. Understand? Now let's look at this guy, Abu Ben Adam, Keg Patrol Mosque. So let's have a look. Abu Ben Adam is a shrine mosque. As you know, mosques are where Jews go and worship. As far as I know, this is where Jews go, so the Jews have to be blamed for this. And Abu Ben Adam, let's have a look. 1922, ancient Arabic order, the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine. Let's have a look. This is the Abu Ben Adam Mosque, okay? Also known as Ibrahim Balkhi, is one of the most prominent of the early Sufi saints. Oh my golly, what a coincidence. I thought he was a Jew. His first spiritual guide was a Christian monk, well-known propaganda in Islam, called Simeon. And here it's actually in the National Register of Historic Pieces. So it's in Shrine Mosque, 601 East Street, Louis Street, corner of 601 East Street and Louis Street in Springfield, Missouri. So so understand, these guys are Islamic. They're an Islamic secret society. And to join them, you must be a Mason. Now, okay, AAONMS is an anagram of a Mason. They're Masons, right? And notice the first shrine on September 26, 1872, these two men met with 11 others in New York's Masonic Hall. So these Masons met. Now, the Masons claim to be non-religious, a non-religious, non-denominational order, except they're 100% Islamic, okay? So they organized the Ancient Order of the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine for North America. They became charter members of the New York temple named Mecca. That's the Jewish holy city, right? Right, Harry? Am I wrong?
No, you're always correct. Mecca is where I go every day.
Exactly. I mean, you go walk around the thingy 7 times a year, whatever the case might be, right? Now, notice, I'll stop here. I'll finish with this one. And I'll have to repeat this next week because I've jumped ahead, but I wanted you to see where we're going. The Masonic Sword of Allah. Now, we showed earlier the Muslim Brotherhood symbol. This is the flag of Muhammad, the flag of Jihad. And notice the crossed swords. This is a Masonic lodge. Notice the crossed swords on the book. So, any questions? I'll pause here. I'll stop here tonight. Any questions?
We have questions. 1 second. Zaki, you go ahead. Zaki?
That was, sorry, I made a wrong mistake. Sorry about that. I accidentally. Yes?
Yeah, nice to meet you. Thank you. But I just want to say that moon and star and crescent is not the Islamic symbol.
I said someone was going to say that. Remember, I said someone's going to come up and say, it's not the Islamic symbol. It was started by the Persians. It's like it comes from like the 1800s and it's not original, and it doesn't matter. It is now. It is now. It is today. Doesn't matter what it was. Doesn't matter if it used to be a 1952 Volkswagen Beetle in the past. Today, it's the Star and Crescent.
Yeah. That is that is not from the Muhammad. Yeah, like the cross in the the Catholic or something.
The Star and Crescent, if we have a look, if we go search for Islam today and we say Islamic symbol, you will find the Star and the Crescent. It is today. It doesn't matter what it was. It doesn't matter if Islam was made by Bigfoot in his garage in 1967. Okay? And the original symbol was a picture of a cabbage. Okay? Today, the symbol is the Star and Crescent. Deal with it. And there's a reason those Turks chose that symbol. And it goes way back.
Yeah. And the Quran, the books of the Muslim name is not only Quran, several names. There's it has several names of the book, not only Quran. For example, Al-Furqan. Al-Furqan means the difference, something like that. Al-Furqan, and it's more. I don't know, but not only Quran, Al-Furqan and
Al-Furqan, a Quranic term which poses problems of interpretation, has been variously translated as discrimination, the criterion, separation, deliverance, or salvation. So you are referring here to the criterion. That's just a title given or a term. But Furqan means criterion. This is a word that Muslims use to determine what. They say the Quran is the criterion for making the decisions, right? Was the original criterion. Now today the Sharia is the criterion. That's what Furqan means. As I said, translated as discrimination, criterion, separation, deliverance, or salvation. Hopefully that answers that in terms of what that word means. I can show you the reference if you want to see it. Yeah. Anyone else?
Another Another question or comment from IB?
Okay. I'm going to share my screen and just show that reference. It's right here, Furqan. Go ahead, the reviewer. Yeah.
Hey, Lloyd, can I ask a question?
Unless you want to chat.
Yes, I want
Go
to
ahead.
ask something. Were there
Yeah.
airplanes at 9/11? Like, did airplanes go through the building?
Can I ask a question? What's the orbital velocity of the moon?
I have no idea. But did there go airplanes through the building
It's
or
also
not?
not relevant. It's also not
It's not
relevant right now.
Thank you, IB.
But can you say yes or no at least?
You don't have to answer that. Let's go on with the topic. I will see if anyone else wants to make a comment or ask a question. 1 second. Idaljo wants to say something.
Okay, sure.
Go ahead, Idaljo.
Hello, hello. I was wondering if you guys had ever analyzed Christianity like the same way you are analyzing right now Islam.
Not
You
yet.
know, put it this way: if I were eating an apple right now, you would probably come and say, "Why do you hate bananas? What is your problem with bananas? Why don't you like? What's wrong with you?" And there's not only bananas, there's guavas too. You have a problem with guava? What's wrong with you? You get towards bananas because I'm having an apple. Okay, that's one of the main problems with the internet today. So if I was talking about, well, today we're going to discuss water, you would be going on with me about, why are you talking about sand? Are you sandophobic? Do you hate sand? We're not talking about that today. And I am making a very detailed discussion of all of these, but the whole point is the discussion of Islam. If you'd like to do that, there are plenty of people discussing it. Have a look on YouTube. Go and annoy someone else.
What? I was just wondering if you other day or in the past have made like a discussion of Christianity, you know?
Not yet. If you have any kind of scholar that wants to come online and educate us about Christianity, the good things and the bad things, you're more than welcome to send them
The point is,
our
I'm
way.
speaking about Sharia law. Okay, this is what I'm discussing Islam in terms of its Gnostic roots, in terms of its moral basis, in terms of its law. And this is not really a relevant question. Understand? Christianity does not legislate law. There is no legislation of law. It doesn't issue parking tickets. Islam does make law about parking tickets. Understand? These are completely separate because Islam is a religion of law. Christianity is not. Islam, if it is a religion of law, what are its laws? And this is something that is hidden and unknown. And do you have a problem with me discussing Islamic law?
I have no problem. I mean, I like it. I like to discuss things, you know?
Okay. Well, that's a separate discussion for a different day. They are completely different ideas. They are contrary ideas. Islam, for instance, I've shown the evidence previously. I went through the Sharia, I went through about 2 or 3 different manuals. I showed the permission that Islam gives for child sex. There's no ambiguity. Islamic law allows men, adult males, to diddle infants who are still in the cradle. It's legal in Islam. There is no argument within the law. There is no argument by the scholars. Muslim scholars have no issue with it because it is moral, because the Sharia says what the Sharia says is right is right. Understand? This is absolutely a sin and a crime in civilized countries. These are two separate ideas. They are not to be confused. So anyway, but let's move on, please. That's a distraction.
Okay. Any other questions, guys? Dave, I think you wanted to say something.
When you were discussing the Masons and the
Mhm.
Democrats and the KKK, it kind of links in that there would have been interrelationships with the Islamic slave traders and the slavery that occurred in America. Would you
Yeah, because like
agree?
95% of the slave owners were Democratic. Yeah. They would have dealt with the Islamic slave traders in Africa. Yeah.
Okay, Lloyd. Do you have any final words for tonight?
No, that's it. I'm sorry. I just forgive me if I get a little annoyed with people, but yeah. So look, that's that. I'm very much reliant on documentation, things I can prove, and I'm really deeply against just claims without basis. Okay, I present evidence to the degree that I can, right? And but no, let me just stop sharing. Okay. Yeah, so that's it. So hopefully I've given you a strong overview, a good understanding of, and I'll continue with this next week to talk about Gnosticism. Okay, its effect on modern culture. I've shown you something of that. Gnosticism, its effect on, its relevance and also its connection to Islam and where it leads us, where it takes us, because it's got a completely different moral basis. So your final thoughts, Harry?
I would
What
like
have you
to
gained
allow
from this?
another question, if I may.
Sure.
Parabellum, can you talk?
Yeah, so we all just made that comment. You were talking about Islam, the connection between Islam and the slaves in the South in past history. What about the slave history that's linked to the Jews?
So if
Because
I
a
was
lot of
talking
people,
about bananas, I'd be pulled over the coals for not talking about pineapples.
no, but he was talking about what y'all were just speaking on the connection with Islam to the slaves in the South. Whenever he
Mm-hmm.
made the statement, and that's what I was. It wasn't all Islam. Is my point? There's
So look, as you know, Jews represent, according to conspiracy theorists, 89.7% of humanity's population, and therefore are responsible for everything. Okay, so Jews represent something like 0.2% of the world's population. So how much, in terms of the physical amount of people, could they actually get done? Right? The answer is very, very little. Right? Whereas Muslims number what, going on 2 billion, a third of the world's population. Now, I'd say if you look at the ratios, let's see. Well, those Muslims, they were responsible for, during history, roughly 99% of the slave trade. But you know what? We hate Jews, so let's focus on the Jews because we hate those guys. But you know what? The Muslims will chop our heads off if we say anything. So let's be cowards. Let's turn our backs and bend over and ask them if they'll use Vaseline. Okay. And let's blame the Jews because the Jews are not likely to send someone to stab us in the eye on London Bridge or cut off our heads in our beds. That is typically where that discussion comes from and goes to. So understand, when you look at the Islamic slave trade, and I'm happy to do a discussion on that, a deep dive into that, a lot of the claims, some of the claims about Jews running the slave trade are bullshit. I'm sorry, excuse me, bad cough. And it is freezing out here in Poland. I'm sitting, seriously, it's freaking cold. That's why I'm wearing a jacket. And Islam is responsible for the biggest slave trade in history. Okay, nothing, and nobody comes close to the Islamic slave trade. Nothing.
But
By
they're just
far.
responsible for the death of 100 million people during their
Okay,
hunting season.
so Christians did slavery. There's not a single race on earth that did not engage in slavery. Not one. Not a single one. Everybody. Those South American Indians that are as white as the driven snow were slave traders and cannibals and genocidal. Okay, they were vicious, nasty brutes. Okay, Africans, vicious, nasty, slave trading brutes. All of them, every single one. I will tell you who did ban ultimately and abandon the slave trade. That would be the Christians. Okay, Jews abandoned the slave trade a long time ago. Okay, so there's a lovely sort of desire to point fingers, but nobody wants to talk about Islam because they will smear you, they will sue you, they will burn your house down, they will chop off your head. I think we need to look more at the people who are responsible and go, well, let's blame the Jews, because remember I spoke in the beginning about find a victim, a weak group of victims that we can voice our frustration against. That's what I opened with. Okay, let me go back to that. A weak group of victims that we can voice our frustration against, and that would happen to be the Jews. And I mentioned that explicitly as an example. And this is what's happened. It's just become the thing people do. Excuse me, but I get really upset when I start hearing about that. Like, what about? Okay, so these guys did 99 out of 100 murders, but what about that Jew over there? He might have done one. I think we really need to go after him because these guys are bad murderers. They can hurt me. So let's ignore those 99 murders out of 100. Does that make sense?
You want her to respond?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Oh no.
No,
she
I
can
just
talk.
I'm not defending Islam in any way. I was just, but if you also trace the money back, though that they're the less of the population, they controlled most of the money. So if you,
Well, let's talk about that. They controlled most of the money. That's a wonderful statement because you see, the church, in its idiocy back in the day in Europe in the Middle Ages, decided that, well, it's wrong of us to deal with money, So we're going to be like all righteous and stupid and stuff, and we won't deal with money. We won't do banking because that's a sin or whatever. And then, of course, the people who were at the time cleaning the latrines, okay, getting their feet literally ankle deep in poop. Okay, the people who were slaughtering the hogs, digging the trenches, the poorest of the poor, the disenfranchised, suddenly they were the only people that had legal dispensation in Christian Europe to do banking. Okay, so the church, whether wittingly or unwittingly, but the church created that opportunity, and the Jews, being the only ones that weren't under the church canon law, they could then open banks, and they did. It wasn't a conspiracy. It was stupidity by the church and the government of the day. They'd control the money. Listen to my propaganda. They control the money. Excuse my stupidity here, but excuse my sarcasm. It was a move, and the Jews were the only ones in a position to do anything about it, and they did, and they prospered, okay, because they work hard and they're smart people, okay? It was not a conspiracy. It was the stupidity of the church. That's the reason why. So when you start using common phrases, they control the money. No, they capitalized on an opportunity they were given because there was a gap that no one else could fill. That's the history. So really, seriously, think about every phrase you make before you speak.
no, but
I would have to interject with that because you said if they capitalized on it, that means they profited off of slavery.
thank you.
If you look at who owns the slave ships that
Thank
came
you. That's
to
what
the
I was getting at.
Americas, all the names are linked back to Jewish owners of these slave ships.
Who was selling the slaves?
Jewish owners of the ships.
Who was selling the slaves? Who was capturing and selling the slaves?
Jews were too.
Who was capturing and selling the slaves?
Go ahead and explain that. I'm not sure where you're getting at vaguely on this.
Africa.
Who was capturing and selling the slaves? Muslims. So in other words, let's ignore the vast majority of the activities and focus on the Jews because we hate the Jews, right? That's the common refrain. Now, those ships were owned by a bunch of different people. If they were rich, they were simply engaging in commerce. Christians were to blame. Brits were to blame. Everybody was to blame. This was not an issue with just one group. However, certain groups eventually, over time, changed their moral stance and thus their legal stance. Islam makes slavery legal. It's in the Sharia. It has never been abolished. It can never be abolished. They can temporarily withhold the enforcement of the law, but within Islam, slavery is very much legal. I recommend you get a copy of the Hidayah.
It's the same in the Jewish religion. If you read the Talmud, it also speaks about world domination, and it also speaks about to every Jewish man and woman, they'll own 2,800 slaves.
Tell you what, I'm going to be here next week. Why don't you bring me the specific references, the page number, the reference, the chapter, the verse, specifically, okay? Specifically, the links. Bring me the works, okay?
All right.
You do that. Okay? Bring me the specific evidence. Because I've had this discussion about people with the Talmud, and we must be reading different books entirely.
What I would like to add, Lloyd, is one of the things that I've been looking at, and I mean, my challenge to what's going on began in 2003, and I started looking at the global economy and watched, and we did some sort of calculations, and actually managed to make a phone call into the Bank of England where I spoke to what I was told was a senior public relations officer. I've still got the recording. And my understanding is that one of the problems that we have in terms of the economy is that it's mathematically impossible to repay the debts that have been generated through this system. But there's something else, and this may be significant. And that is that if we look at the hierarchy of these corporate entities that are doing what they're doing, it's interesting because one of them is called Vanguard and the other one is called Black Rock. And the significance of the Black Rock element is it's kind of reflective or symbolic. Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. That's a good catch. Black Rock. Yeah,
I
that's
think
very,
they are
very
also responsible for sending private armies to the Middle East, especially in Iraq, indirectly at least. That Black Rock group.
no, different. That's BlackRock's a financial institution. They're the largest investor in the world. They must have something like what, 8 trillion dollars under management. Fidelity's like, I think, next. But BlackRock is also at the moment buying up property in the US like crazy. They're buying up all available houses. They're the biggest hedge fund or something and investor in the world. And BlackRock.
And we've also got the lid on the pressure cooker that I see as being, and I know this is completely outside your subject sort of matter area.
Yeah.
But we had this paradigm shift globally starting in just after the spring equinox, which is kind of symbolic in 2020, relating to what I regard as a phantom pathogen. That's only my opinion. But as a result of that, we've also been watching this narration talking about carbon and the idea that carbon will be the measure of our ability to function economically, combined with the World Economic Forum and the United Nations.
The UN is controlled by two forces, China and the OIC, which is a bloc of, I think, 53 Islamic countries that control the UN. That's why they can every year have these against Israel. They can have all of these standing condemnations within the UN against Israel, and they can ignore everything that Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, Iran, and so on does.
Yeah, but when I look at the origins of the United Nations, I find it's our friend, the other merchant of the black goo from, oil, is actually the guy who owns the site in New York, which is the home of the United Nations. So to me, there's some kind of affiliation that we don't yet fully see. But the United Nations has positioned itself, along with the World Health Organization, as the global legislators in terms of so many things. And the other thing I wanted to say really quickly, Tony Blair, who's a member of the Fabian Society, an evil see you next Tuesday, repealed the Slave Act in this country. And so now we're seeing a lot of British businesses making a statement relating to their activities relating that slavery is appearing as a topic. So what was gone is now returning in terms of the spoken or written memes, should we say. So
I'm not sure what it's about, so I can't comment.
No, it's just that there is this trend that I can see that's destroying the Logos rapidly. And yeah.
Okay, no, fair enough. Fair enough. But notice how many, notice the desire to come forward to start deflecting from Islam, good Christians or good non-Muslims coming forward to like, but the Jews.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm
No,
I'm
not you,
taking...
not you. I didn't say that. No, not related to yourself. But notice, I mean, you've heard this, and it's going to happen. You're going to hear a lot of that. Okay, there's going to be but, and there's going to be a hyper focus on that one element, and then completely ignoring the rest. When what the Jews are accused of, okay, once you start looking through their doctrine, you don't find it. Okay, but when you look in Islam, you will explicitly find it within the doctrine. But everybody's like, that doesn't matter. We want to blame the Jews. Okay, nobody wants to deal with Islam. It's that's something they're not ready to deal with, even though I've shown all of these things and started to make the connections within their own law, because the Sharia is the Talmud of Islam, and nobody studies the Talmud of Islam. Okay, so anything from you, Harry? Any thoughts?
There is another question. Do you still have the patience, or?
Yeah, depends.
Okay, let's try. Rabel, can you go ahead? No, he had the disappearing act. Well,
should I do something from the Talmud? Should I do something from the Talmud quickly? Should I take
course.
something, a passage from the Talmud? Because
But
I mean,
can you
people
open
love.
your video
I
and share
will
screen,
do.
please?
I will do so. If you give me a moment, I'll go back to that. So last week I ended off with a passage from the Talmud. So let me go back to Telegram and just bring this up. And I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share my screen. I'll start my video again. So another thing, for instance, last week I spoke about something within the Talmud. Okay. Actually, let me do something simple and short first. Okay. So I did this one last week where people, including this twat here, this guy called Owen Benjamin, the world's dumbest human, says that, and he says this, and I played the video for you guys. If you think that they have to tell the truth, you have to understand in the Talmud, they say, let me quote it, Jews may use lies to circumvent the Gentile. And I showed you exactly what the Talmud actually says. So this Owen Benjamin is lying through his teeth because it certainly does not say that. Okay. And of course, he grabs like a few words from the very start of this and ignores the actual story. Now, for instance, this is a very popular claim made within the Talmud, made about the Talmud by by people who are now look, are you a liar if you spread lies? If you're ignorant, but you're spreading a lie, you're repeating a lie. So you think it's true, but you're spreading a lie. Are you truthful or are you a liar? You may want to ask yourself that. If you're telling a lie, that's a lie, but you don't know it's a lie, but you're repeating it. Are you a liar or are you truthful? So, for instance, this is a very common claim where people will claim Avodah Zarah 22a, Christians have intercourse with animals. This is apparently a claim that Jews are supposed to make in the Talmud. Now, it says here in the Mishnah, one may not keep an animal in the inns of Gentiles because they are suspected of bestiality. So they've taken the very first sentence in this discussion, okay? These are posed, as I said, these are in the form of responsa. So you're given a problem and you're expected to respond because the students are expected to either respond negatively or positively by utilizing their knowledge of the law and discuss and debate the issue. So it says here, so let's continue and read the whole thing. Since even Gentiles are prohibited from engaging in bestiality, and it says, okay, that's interesting. See, this is a question, not a statement. It is not an accusation. This is the method. This is the deliberative method that the Jewish rabbis and the scholars, and I'm not defending the rabbis here, used to determine the law and the application of the law, and whether it was within amongst themselves or amongst others. And because they were living very often and mostly amongst foreigners, they had to fit their law in those circumstances. Since even Gentiles are prohibited from engaging in bestiality, a Jew who places his animal there is guilty of violating the prohibition. You shall not put a stumbling block before the blind. So this is a problem statement. That's in Leviticus 19:14. So they're actually just quoting the Bible. Okay, Christians might know that's the Bible. It's something that Christians generally believe in. And a woman may not seclude herself with Gentiles because they are suspected of engaging in forbidden sexual relations. And any person may not seclude himself with Gentiles because they are suspected of bloodshed. Okay, fine and well. The Gemara then says, with regard to the assumption, and it calls it an assumption, that Gentiles are suspected of bestiality, the Gemara raises a contradiction. Okay? And it says, one may purchase an animal from Gentiles for use as an offering, and there is no concern that it might be unfit due to it being an animal that copulated with a person, or due to his being an animal that was the object of bestiality, or due to it having been set aside for idol worship, or due to the animal itself having been worshipped, which would make the animal unclean, right? So Rav Tachlifa says that Rav Shila and Rav, in the name of Rav, says a Gentile, and this is the final conclusion here, a Gentile protects and thereby spares his own animal so that it will not become barren. Since an act of bestiality may cause an animal to become barren, there is no concern that the Gentile engaged in immoral behavior with it. Now, the gentleman that spoke to me about the slavery and the Jews, I bet you've believed this for decades. Okay? There's loads. We can go through a bunch of these. And I'll bet you've believed these and gone, oh, those Jews are horrific. Okay? Because you're gullible. You were lied to. You believed it. You swallowed it, hook, line, and sinker. And you thought, oh my God, I've discovered one of the amazing secrets of the world in the Talmud. No, you are gullible. You were lazy. You failed to read. Okay? You took what you were told. You simply just said, okay, well, I'm stupid. Just pour in the crap that you want to tell me. If the people who were lying to you, and this is not an accident, this was all deliberate. All of this goes way back. There are numerous books that were deliberate propaganda campaigns, deliberate, not accidental. Okay, if they bothered to read, and if you had bothered to read, and if you bothered to do some little bit of reading, you might discover that there's a lot that you believe is true that is not true. Okay, you may want to, I don't know, have an upgrade by reading. Okay, so understand. So does this answer something that you may have heard, Harry? Does this? Yeah.
Oh my! I had so many of those. I actually brought a rabbi to a very full of hate a group here on Telegram, and we had 2 debates with some people who are I don't know how to describe them.
Okay.
Ethno-nationalists, and it was very difficult. And I don't think they care to read. They just repeat and repeat the same claims over and over again, trying
Correct.
to put
I'll
the
do one
entire
more.
Yeah.
At some point, I'll do an episode on this. I'll do one more. So let's do this, since people love to be lied to. Yes.
Can I just really ask? Is that which Talmud is that? Because my understanding is there's the Babylonian Talmud and the Jerusalem Talmud.
This is Safari.org. The links are all here. I never hide my sources. My links are all public. So this, I think, would be the Talmud Bavli. The Jerusalem Talmud, if I recall, is this much smaller one, different. The most commonly used one is the Talmud Bavli. So this here, this is not the secret Talmud, because I've had so many people said, oh, there's a secret Talmud. They have a secret Talmud they bring out in ceremonies in the basement on Friday nights. I'm like, give me a copy of that secret Talmud so I can check, please. I'm still waiting. So,
One second, Lloyd. Dave, do you have access to General Zod and the others, all those people who are keep on blaming the Jews and the
Yeah. No, listen, and you've heard me. And in fact, I maintained contact with the guests that you had on from Israel, and I'm still
Simon.
in dialogue with them as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
Simon,
he's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, and I it's like I love to be. I always hold this notion that the moment that I think I know something, I should actually test whether I do or not, because it's very easy to slip into these deceptions, and we've all fallen foul of them because we're fallible, you know.
But Dave, I would like to ask, if possible, if you can bring one of the biggest speakers among them, like Charlie Potato, or I don't know what's their names, and maybe we can bring them here to a small debate with Lloyd for 30 minutes on the Talmud. I want them to be destroyed on record. I want it to be everywhere.
Yeah, I've been warning them all about, what worry about the enemy in your midst and on your bloody doorsteps. Get to know what they're doing. And I've actually, Lloyd, I've downloaded the the Reliance of the Traveller, and I've also kept the links to the encyclopedia as well, so that I can, as I have time, make sure
you're welcome to reach out to me. You can contact me on, I'm happy to chat with you.
Yeah, will do, mate, because I've really enjoyed this. It's been like sitting at a really good, nutritious meal, because I just love this stuff.
Let me finish this last one and I'll call it a night. But yes, do you have a last question?
No, you're good. Go.
Okay, so I'll do one more. I did one last week. I'll do this one. If a Jew finds an object lost by a goy, it does not have to be returned. Okay, now I can do several shows on Judaism and the Talmud, and I will at some point. We'll do that, okay? Which, man, do those piss people off? Excuse my French, but people lose their minds. I'm not a Jew, I'm not a Catholic, but I just like researching facts. I like documents that are provably real. But this is not the secret Talmud. This is the Talmud. Okay. So if a Jew finds an object lost by a goy, it does not have to be returned. Usually, this is interpreted as Jews can steal from you. Okay. So this is usually stated as Jews can take and steal from you. This is how it's normally stated, very uncharitably. So let's read what it says. As I said, the Talmud is written, and this would take me 3 hours to go through a whole episode on it, but it's called responsa, and there's a whole philosophy and a whole history behind it, but without going through that. The Baraita continues, and likewise, Rabbi Shimon said, in the case of one who finds a lost item in a main thoroughfare or a large plaza, or in any place where multitudes are found, these items belong to him due to the fact that the owner despairs of their recovery. So if you lose some money in Times Square, if you lose some money at a major thoroughfare, okay, on Fifth Avenue, whatever, in New York, do you expect to find your $5 bill again? No, you do not. And that's all it says. And people have done their worst to lie about what is said here. And we'll go through in detail. Okay. So a dilemma was raised before the sages. Rabbi Elazar says, if one finds a lost item in any place where there are multitudes, the item belongs to him. Now, did he refer? Remember, this is a question answer. These are discussions on the law. These are questions posed to students. And the students have to respond, okay, to demonstrate their knowledge of the law. Or they were trying to find the law. Did he refer only to a place where there's a majority of Gentiles? But in a place where there is a majority of Jews, the owner does not despair of recovering the item because he relies on the Jews to return his item. So he's asking, is there a difference in a place where there's mostly Gentiles or in a place where there's mostly Jews? Does he think differently? Okay. Or perhaps even in a place where there is a majority of Jews, he also says that the item belongs to the one who found it. And if you say that even in a place where there is a majority of Jews, he also said that the item belongs to the one who found it, do the rabbis disagree with him or do they not disagree? Understand, these are questions. These are not statements. Many of these items, many of these concepts that people take, where they steal one sentence, as you saw, and lie about it, and the word is lie, okay? And they fool gullible people, that's you, understand? So these are questions, okay? Often there is no law. Often these are just exercises in legal theory. And if you say that the rabbis disagree, blah, 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 let's continue. The Gemara suggests, okay, come and hear a proof from Varaita in the case of one who finds coins in synagogues and study halls or in any place where the multitudes are found. These coins belong to him due to the fact that the owner despairs of their recovery. So even in places where Jews congregate and only Jews congregate, if you find something that's lost, keep the damn thing because no one knows who the owner is. You're never going to find it. Just take it. Conclude, and also you'll read through this that it says if there's no name on the damn thing, you don't know who it belongs to. If you find it, if you know it, give it back. If you don't, keep it. Conclude from the Baraita that Rabbi Shimon says that a lost item belongs to the finder even in a place where there is a majority of Jews. Even in a place where there is a majority of Jews, as synagogues and study halls are places frequented exclusively by Jews. So they don't say steal shit from the Gentiles. They're saying, look, if you find something, you don't know who it belongs to, there's no identification, keep the damn thing. There's no way you're going to find the owner. It's just being practical. The Gemara rejects the proof. We are dealing with the case where the coins are scattered. Now they're saying, no, that's not the circumstance. It's where the coins are scattered and there's no distinguishing mark on them. Even in a place where the multitudes are not found, in other words, where the Jews are, the coins belong to the finder. Because the circumstances are that there is no markings. You found coins. Coins don't have names on them. And it says the Gemara goes on, rejects this proof. Rather, the Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Elazar. So it goes back and forth. The scholars are debating. Where you find two Jews, you'll find three opinions. That's an old saying. Okay? And he stated his opinion even in a place where there's a majority of Jews. So keep the damn thing because you don't know who it belongs to. Even if the owner was a Jew. You still don't know. Keep the damn thing. Then it goes on. It belongs to the finder because the owner despaired of recovering a barrel misplaced in a public area, even with regards to a place where there is a majority of Jews. So the rule holds even amongst the Jews. They are not singling out the Gentiles. But now it goes on. With regard to one who left a stolen item to his children, and this is where the Ten Commandments, those who claim to be, I don't know, Christian or Christian by culture, might know about this 10 Commandments thing. The Jews kind of wrote it in a thing called the Bible. You may have heard of that book. With regards to the one who left a stolen item to his children, the heirs are obligated to pay the owner. Okay? It refers even to a cow that he plows with or a donkey that he drives by directing it from behind, which the heirs are obligated to return. And from the fact that the heirs must return a cow and a donkey, one can infer that they must also return a bed and a table. So if you know who the owner is, as a Jew, you're obligated to follow the law and give it back. If you cannot identify the owner, even if it's a Jew in a Jewish place, keep it, and that is what the statement. The problem is you've got to read through like 50 pages of crap to get this. But weak-minded people go, someone hates Jews. They said Jews can steal stuff. Oh yeah, Jews are bad. Because you're lazy. Because you refused to take the time to look. You let others do the thinking for you. They didn't think for you. They programmed you to believe a lie. They capitalized on your laziness and your ignorance. Understand? Now, Jews are people. They steal things. Christians steal things. People do bad things. Nobody's perfect. But in the doctrine, okay? And don't think that any particular sentence or any paragraph within these debates is a law. No. Okay? Sometimes there are, sometimes there's even no conclusion. But understand, it's very clear here that when you find something and there's no way to identify the owner, even if it's in a place where there's exclusively Jews, keep it. It's just being practical. Gentiles are not singled out. I will pause here. Your thoughts before I continue, before I go.
It's incredible. Your research is complete and beautiful, and how I wish I knew you before. And instead of bringing the rabbi, I should have brought you. Actually, I can see online one of the worst guys who are attacking Judaism. If you had more patience and energy, I would really like to invite him now for some
Dude,
distraction.
it's been 3 hours. I want to call it a day. I've worked in the morning, so it's
Yeah,
after
so
midnight.
next time.
So look, to the gentleman I spoke with earlier, understand, if you bring me those references and I have time to look at that and I find that you are wrong, understand, I'm not very patient with things like this, okay? Now, I hope you understand that you may just be wrong, and the people you've spoken to, you believe this from, have been lying to you, because I have gone after people. Now, I'm not trying to be malicious, but man, I have humiliated people in the past when they deserved it, okay? Because these people have gone out of their way to be nasty, and yeah, and I'm trying to show you that maybe you need to rethink what you think. Okay, you might find something different, and I'm very good at finding information. Okay, I have hundreds of pages of research, detailed. Okay, I don't make shit up. I give my resources. Every single link is available. I share all my resources, every paper, every document. It's all shared. Okay, I hide nothing. I don't claim I have a secret copy of the Talmud in the basement, which some people have told me. Understand? So yeah. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. So hopefully this gives you some food for thought.
Yes, it was incredible. Thank you so much for your time, your knowledge, your energy, your dedication. We appreciate that very, very much, and we are looking forward to continue next Monday.
You're welcome. Oh, by the way, if you want to look up these references, I mean, if I go here, if I actually just let me just show you. I'll just link this across. This is a link to safaria.org, and this is the actual references right here. You can see the whole thing is right here.
Yeah, it's even written in Hebrew.
Yes, it's all there. Okay, even in the place where there's a majority of Jews, and you can see there's commentaries. You can go to the blah blah Rashi, Tosafot, and yeah. So there's a lot more going on here. So it's not like I just placed it here for simplicity's sake. Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you very much. I hope that next time we can have like 20-30 minutes for a small debate with one of those guys I mentioned earlier, if you allow it.
I mean, look, these guys have also very well practiced polemics. Understand? They're very well practiced polemics. I mean, so it's just, it's not necessarily going to end very well. Understand? Because also, but the point is just to show them that maybe that one sentence from the 50 paragraphs that you clipped, maybe it isn't quite accurate.
Yeah. Okay, we will see next week. Thank you again, and see you next time.
All right. Take care, everyone. Good night.
Good night, Lloyd. Thank you.
Cheers, Lloyd.
Welcome. Cheers.